and we're recording on this computer. So what's been something that's been well for 2020, all things considered?
Oh my gosh, I would like to call on Kara to answer this question first.
Actually, that makes me feel good. I never answer questions first. I always let everybody else talk.
Because
You have the most exciting happy news. So.
Yes, you do.
Oh, yeah. So, but it goes with a story, short story time. So, reflecting on the past, last year in December, we were all sitting around a table as a team, doing our Christmas celebration. And I told the girls, with everything that had happened to me and with me picking up cycling, I was like, I think it would be so cool to become an instructor. And 2020, that was my goal. And then the pandemic happened and I had to take a few months off because I couldn't bring a bike home and I couldn't do it from home. So of course, when everything picked back up, I went back to cycling, but the energy wasn't the same. So I told them, I was like, I would love to train to become an instructor and maybe bring some of that energy back. Fast forward, 10 months later, I am now a certified cycle instructor.
Woohoo! Are you so proud
I just
of her?
found out the other day.
Cool. That's so cool.
I'll be honest with you. That's amazing. And it's something I've always wanted to do because I love spin, but you've done it. So congratulations.
Thanks. So yeah, my big goal for 2020 was reached.
That's awesome.
It really is huge, Kara. Huge. And you should be really proud of yourself. When I think about when you first came to Tropical, how far you have come is just mind blowing, and so proud of you.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So yeah, that's a big win. But I also, if we're talking professionally, I think another big win for this year, and because we finished it last year, but it came into this year, would have been, what was the training class that we had done? The Member Advantage program. I definitely think working in an at-home environment, taking what I learned there, even just from the perspective of talking to people, from changing, because I think out of the whole team, I probably have had the most trouble changing in this environment, I think. So I definitely found my groove. So I definitely think that would be a win, that now I'm okay working from home. I can pick things up. I've got a set schedule. And even that because we worked through that on our one-on-ones.
Yes.
So I would say that is a win. And going forward, something I'm excited about, that now that I have my groove, that I can kind of formulate a plan to go forward from it. It took me a while, I'm not going to lie, but it was a win and I'm excited about it. And I'm looking forward to it.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that to start us off on both sides, because it's one of those, I think we all got a little shook up from this, and we deal with it in different ways and it has different outlets, but to hear that just personal progress and personal journey of growth, it's amazing. It's beautiful. So thank you for starting us that way this morning, Kara.
Thanks.
Who's next?
I don't know. I can't think of one off the top of my head in terms of. I think overall, just it's obviously we're having obstacles to overcome. That kind of sort of makes it rough. But I think overall, to your point, we've kind of survived. So that, I guess that's positivity in terms of us being able to be very agile, in terms of being able to switch and focus on things COVID era versus what we were doing prior.
It's amazing when you think about it, because I remember being there last November, so right at a year ago, and who would have thought? You just don't. There's no way. I think it was Saturday Night Live. They did a skit this past week. My wife was watching it, to where they were talking to this seance, or this was a palm reader or something like that. And they were, looking ahead into what was going to happen in 2020. And so the palm reader was making these predictions for everyone. Adele was on and making these.
Well.
Yeah.
She looks so good.
She looked amazing. She did. And they're making all these predictions. I see you, sitting in a room washing a bag of Doritos or Cheetos or something like. I mean, it was absolutely hilarious, because we just don't have the context. So you're right, Tabitha. You're right. We not only and I think for you guys, not only did you survive, but you thrived too. You had areas where you really stepped up to the plate and created a lot of value internally, not just for marketing, but for the organization, and most importantly for the members and the communities that you guys are serving. So
I mean,
absolutely.
if I'm being honest, I think that's just how our team operates. And I think that is one of the stronger points of our team is we're just those type of people.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you.
Well, it's important. It's important to celebrate that, because especially this year, and I mean, even in the coaching that we've been doing with each of you in different paces and cadences, I mean, we take that time. What's going well? It's been something what's been a win, something that you've learned, etc. But now we're looking at the overall macro view, because now we're going to rise above, and one of the things that we're doing this year a little bit differently, and this is more of just a gift to you. And I might be spoiling this a little bit, but all of the pre-coaching assessments that you did, we're actually going to be turning those into a little mini book journal for each of you individually.
Oh, that's so cool.
That way you have literally physical documentation of your year. So you can go back, and I highly recommend this, and I'll give some more context once we get into December, because that's something that we'll be doing December, is you'll be able to go back and really just like read your previous history, read your previous year. So the good, the bad, the ugly, the positive. So if anything, it's just documentation, because I'm working so hard to try to make the intangible tangible, even now more before with COVID. So Tabitha, anything else from you?
I don't think so. If I could pinpoint something specifically, I'll circle back around.
Thank you. I'm gonna throw one out your way for you. Alpha rank.
Oh.
Getting alpha rank, and I'm going to tell you why. The little bit of insights that we've already been able to gain, specifically where those pinpoints and those pain points and those frustrations are on the conversion side. I think, there's a lot of cultural, there's still a lot of organizational change that's going to happen to make some of that a reality. But number one, and I write about this in the book, we've done the assessment, we have some awareness. Now we need to accept that there's some changes that have to happen that might be beyond your control, but we've done what we can to bring that to the table once again. And so I think that's a really big one right there with alpha rank.
Oh yeah, and that's true. And I do think that we've done a little bit more in terms of testing. I think it's probably been more towards the end of the year versus the beginning of the year. But I think COVID has kind of allowed us to kind of play around with or provide the environment to kind of do different things. And I do think that we've tried to do smart content across, different portions of the website, and we've done some A/B testing.
Absolutely.
I feel like this year we've done a little bit more to be proactive in terms of testing rather than being like doing what we know works.
Yes. Absolutely. So that's a bit, I'd throw that under the L for learning. Yeah. Thank you. Amy, Marilyn.
Okay. So for me, I think our win, it's a little bit of a selfish one, but I think my team will appreciate that. I feel like marketing is we're the voice of the member and the voice of employees. And I've always felt like we're like kind of like the glue that brings all the different departments together, but underappreciated. And I think for us this year, we've really been able to step up and shine in so many different areas that I think there's a different appreciation and a different awareness of everything it is that we do and the value that we provide. From our having to communicate with the members with regards to branch operations, to taking our sales team outside sales initiatives and making them completely digital, to helping launch loan promotions that are not just for sales but for service. Like just everything that we've done this year and how quickly we've had to implement things and how many times we've had to pivot and change and launch and take back. And I just think that has brought an awareness to what it is that we do and the value that we provide that we've never had any other year. So for that, I think for us, that's been a big win in 2020.
I'm hearing you say two key things, and it's something that we're starting to think about more, and it's really going to be kind of top of my mind going into 2021. And even I introduced you, Amy, to Carrie Ann. You mentioned voice of the member, voice of the customer. We've always thought marketing about that, but just as important, if not even more important, it's voice of the employee, voice of the team member, because historically speaking, where has that perspective fallen?
The voice of the employee?
Yes, where has that typically fallen within the organization?
HR.
Yeah, I would say
Yes.
more HR.
It's been HR. But if we really believe our team has the ability across and throughout the organization to become little marketing machines, micro marketing machines, advocates, if you will, marketing has to play more of a role to facilitate all of those conversations. And Kara, that's something that you and I have spent some time talking about from this idea. And I'll be talking with Carrie Ann about this on our podcast about SMAG, social media advocacy group. So I'm going to mock this up for you right here, and maybe just to frame your thinking a little bit further. So traditionally, when we think about a org chart, we think about who sits at the top. Who sits at the top of a normal org chart?
The front line?
Well,
Or flipping it?
We're going to flip the org. So in the normal org chart, who sits at the top? Board, CEO,
Right.
Yeah.
senior leadership team, et cetera, et cetera. But when we do this, now we start to flip it. And this has to be a cultural conversation, and repeating this and showing this and visualizing this to break some of the old world thinking, to where now we have at the top, we don't even have members or account holders. We have community. So community sits at the top. Then we have members that sit here. Now we go down one level. This is the key. Now we have marketing, we have sales, and we have service. And service could be broken up, and sales could be broken up. Call center, frontline, or call center, in branch. Call center, in branch, digital. Same thing on the service side, because I do think there has to be a digital component to sales, to service, but marketing. And if I was to redraw this, I'd actually put marketing in the middle of this between sales and service. Who sits under that? Lending, operations, IT. Who sits under that? Senior leadership team. Who sits under that? CEO. Who sits under that? Board of directors. So I think you're on to something with your thinking right there going into 2021. Great stuff. Anything else?
No.
Excellent. Thank you. I know Amy had to hop on that call with Rich. So while we're waiting for Amy, Audrey, calling you.
Hello.
Hi, Audrey.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you guys doing this morning? Wasn't able to say hi earlier this morning. I was having some internet problems.
Yeah, we saw you pop off and then pop back on, so
Yeah.
I figured.
Yeah, this was a struggle. What has been a win for me? I would just say, well, personally, I can understand, I can empathize with Kara, just, the struggle, and not even the struggle, just the changes, working from home environment, setting that routine, getting that schedule down, especially with other family members around you and children. So that's been, I feel like I'm in a groove too, so I can understand that. And I would say, as far as a win, would just be, tackling all these new platforms that I've been working with lately, all the technology in different areas that have all come together. So that's been really exciting. And yeah, that's been a huge win in my book. And I'm excited to keep working with you guys and in the community, and hopefully providing some creating some value and just being here along the journey with you guys.
Since Amy's still
I
on
only
the
answered half of it.
No, I think that's great. I think that's great, and I appreciate that perspective very much. And that's one thing, you know, I hear Olivia in the background for her 10 o'clock. We even had to change our start time for our daily calls from 10 to 10:15, just because of the way that the remote school schedule was. So if anything, it's that idea of flexibility.
Marilyn just had to do that.
Yeah,
for
I did.
for her son.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's just those little small changes, and you move it, and you get some big wins on the opposite end of the spectrum. I want to flip over here, and I know Amy's still on the phone, but I do want to keep moving forward with some of the agenda items. Okay, so we've talked about 2020, but I want to move this into a larger spectrum. I want to go back and looking back over the past decade. Let's look at 10 years and just experiences that you've lived through. What experiences have been most meaningful for you?
Oh, I exactly know how to answer this.
Just what experiences have been most meaningful for you? And I want you to write these down. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to go through this thinking here, writing down what experiences, going back all the way to 2010, and what experiences, personally or professionally, have been most meaningful for you over that time period.
2010, I was like 10 years old.
No, I was like 10 years old.
So wrong.
Here we go.
I was a little bit more than 10 years old.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of background music on, give you 2 minutes to think through this, and then we'll come back here in a moment, and then there'll be some specific exercise that will follow this thinking here.
Can you reiterate the question one more time?
Absolutely. Looking back over the last decade, the last 10 years, what have been the most meaningful experiences that have impacted you personally or professionally over the last 10 years?
Oh, I like this music.
Great finish.
All right. So I want to talk through these experiences that you've had over the last decade. What has been most impactful? And we're going to go somewhere with this in a moment. But first and foremost, I just want to hear kind of if you could just, what are your top experiences, personally and professionally?
Ready to go first?
Go for it.
All right, I wrote down 3 things. And by the way, I got a little emotional, so thanks for that. I think professionally, it was the switch in the switch to digital, right? Marketing went from like creative to data, from crayons to numbers. And
Art and science.
That whole like shift for me. I mean, when I started in marketing, I was creating newsletters and looking for art. Like it was very much creative driven. And it's completely shifted. So that was a big impact for me. And then really personally, I think it's been more impactful for me personally. My kids grew up. I had little kids 10 years ago, and now I have a 21-year-old and an almost 18-year-old. So I'm feeling that a lot. And then made me emotional is I value time, because in the last 10 years, I lost my mom and my grandmother. And something that I didn't value before, like just always having them there to make a call, has made me appreciate family and just time in general. Sorry. But that's been a big change for me.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
No more drama. We'll just have some coffee. It'll be fine.
No. And it's important that we stop and just at least reflect, because 10 years is a long time, but it's not a long time. 10 years. It's this weird kind of dichotomy of, we've made some progress, and we've experienced a lot, but imagine the next 10 years, right? So it's just like, I think 2020 with the way that this has been, it's just good to really kind of stop, pause, think, reflect on that. So thank you for sharing that. Well, we're going to come back to that thinking here in a moment. Tabitha, Kara.
Yeah. I think for me,
considering that you were 5 years old.
yeah. No, I was like, what are we? We're in 2020.
We're in 2020.
I was 23. So, but I think I could have kept writing. I just had a lot of stuff happen within 10 years, both personally and professionally. I think, like on a personal side, there was just a whole bunch of stuff. There was like completing various degrees that I was able to do, like my 2 masters, almost done with doctorate. I have 5 classes left. So that's crazy. Just getting married. My mom had a lot of stuff with her health too, still does to today. But I think more on a professional level, I think it was, to be honest, I think one of the highlights for me was actually joining Tropical, because I felt like it was a position that, like, I knew what they were looking for, and I knew I could bring value to it because I was exposed to HubSpot and stuff like that prior. So it was almost like a perfect fit. Like, I remember reading the description for the job and I was like, this is it. This is what I've been waiting for my whole life. So I felt like it was like such an easy transition from the past position I was in to the position that I'm in now. So, and I just knew I could bring value. Sometimes you get into a job and you're like, okay, well, I can learn and, we'll see how it goes. I don't feel like that was, well, I still feel like there's always an opportunity to learn, but I feel like it was just one of those like, like I felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulder type of things. And I think I've been lucky enough to have a lot of opportunities in where I can grow professionally. And that's either from like, working with different vendors to being able to do various like conferences, stuff that we've been able to do like internally. So I do feel like there's been an opportunity at almost every point in the last 10 years that I've been able to kind of sort of learn. Like when I first started with Tropical, I had brief experience with AdWords and stuff like that. Like I had the concept and I knew how to, put it up and running. but with it being able to work with various vendors, like, you know, WordStream and stuff like that, it really provided the opportunity to kind of sort of master it essentially. Like, you know, I was able to then take that from an agency and run it completely in-house. Whereas I wasn't 100% sure I could do it at the very beginning, but, you know, now I'm absolutely sure. Like, anybody asks me a question, I can be like, hey, listen, this is why this happens, and this is how it happens, and everything else. So I'm definitely grateful for those opportunities.
I'm hearing a couple of patterns from your conversation. Number one, your capability has continued to increase. As a result to your capability continuing to increase, your confidence level has continued to increase. I think that all of that, though, is rooted in really the third pattern that I see, and it's what you had expressed 5 classes away from your doctorate, is learning.
Yeah.
It's training and it's education. And I truly believe this, and this kind of came from some of the reflection that I've been doing over the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks, Audrey, since you and we had our quarterly strat session. Training and education is at the heart of any type of transformational activity. And I'm pondering, I'm wondering, I'm questioning why digital transformation, digital growth as a result of digital transformation, why some do better at it than others. And it is, it's because it all comes down to training and education. Because without that, people are going to keep getting stuck. And the whole point of this exercise, and Amy, just as I know you had to hop off, good to see you back. It's okay. It's okay. We're reflecting on the biggest experiences that you've had over the last 10 years, a decade, 2010 to 2020, personally or professionally, and what you've taken from those experiences. But Tabitha, training, education, and if there's one thing that I can continue to encourage you guys, and I know, you know, budget cuts and whatnot, I get it, but training is at the heart of any type of transformational activity. Please continue that training, even if it's personal, and there's so much opportunities available to go now. Audrey, I know that, you know, one of the things that you and I had talked about from the very beginning, training, education. So please continue that personally, be a lifelong learner. So thank you, Tabitha, for sharing that. Absolutely. Kara, let's go over to you.
Sure. I also had 3 things that I wrote down. I think the first thing is, so my grandmother passed away too in the last 10 years, but I don't get upset that she passed away. I look at it as that was a very big learning experience because it was while I was in college, so there was a lot. But I think the biggest thing that experience taught me was to just be a little bit more empathetic. My grandmother died of pancreatic cancer, and I remember I would just be with her all the time. And one of the things that she told me that I still remember to this day is she told me that I needed to let people into my heart because I was very cold. So I try to always, when I feel like I'm being like tough love, I always try to remember what she says. And I do think it comes up a lot because we always talk about, in work, we talk about marketing being emotional with people. And even in life, you just like, in order to make a connection, I think connections are emotional. They're not just words. So I do try to remember what my grandmother told me. One of the other things is my dad in the last 10 years had moved to Germany for the first time. And that was kind of a wake-up call because we had to learn a whole new language. We went there and lived with him. So I definitely think that was a big thing and I think it's now, especially, like, I don't mean to be political, but with the way things are in America now, I think it taught me just to have a different way of thinking of the world as in general. And I am happy because I come from Pennsylvania in a very small town, and I think it helped break through that thinking. And I definitely think moving here as well did the same thing. So I am happy that I don't feel so closed-minded as I could have been if I stayed in the same area. So I think that was pretty profound. And then my other thing was I started my career in the past 10 years. So I wrote down 3 places that I had worked. Carnival, it taught me what I love to do. When I worked at Perry Ellis International, it taught me what I didn't like and absolutely what type of boss I don't want. And now working at Tropical, I think it has taught me how to grow.
Wow. What I liked, what I don't like, which is even more important than trying to identify what you like. It's better to identify what
Yes.
you don't like so that you can do more of what you like. And then now it's that idea of growth. And that, once again, very similar to hearing Tabitha and your reflections, a lot of parallels, a lot of learning. But I think for you, it's about, you've gotten really clear about a lot of things. And that clear, because so many, we get stuck once again when there's a lot of confusion floating around us. And I think that's been amplified now because of COVID. So thank you. Thank you. And you're a spin instructor now. So that's the cherry on top, if you will. So thank you for sharing. Amy, I know that you've been on the line, but I just wanted to give you the opportunity to take the floor for a moment.
Oh,
Okay. If you're comfortable.
Yeah, no, I guess I'll go back and answer the first question and then try to throw the tenure perspective on it. But I think a win, again, for me personally this year has been getting my master's degree. That was something I've wanted to do since I got my bachelor's degree, and kept having interruptions along the way, and actually going through it and sticking with it. The interesting thing was I was on a call with the strategic communication program, and they asked me to come and talk about my experience with potential new students. Like, there's 27 other people on the call. And I think one of the things in the questions that they asked were, did you ever at any point feel like you got in over your head, that it was too much? And I'm thinking back, and there were several points along the way of getting my master's where I felt like I was in over my head, because we were also getting Get Beyond Money off the ground too, which was huge. But a big thing that helped me was the fact that we were working on Get Beyond Money. At the same time, I was learning about digital strategic communications, and I was able to use my journey, or the marketing department's journey of putting Get Beyond Money together for a lot of my classes. So I was able to directly apply what I was learning to something that was truly day to day. So I feel like that was a huge win in terms of not just getting my master's, but having it be an applicable master's, not just letters to put after my name. Professionally, I think a couple different things I would say. Saving Get Beyond Money, which I thought for sure Rich was really against continuing it. He felt like we weren't getting anything out of it. And then when the team decided, let's propose folding it into Tropical, and he agreed to it, and then it turns out that's the next step in the progression anyway. That felt really, really good as our team, that we did something, and we were able to move the ball forward and not just give up like we did with Young and Free Florida and the Millennial U and some of our other attempts and misses. Another thing I think that was huge for us is we recently found out that we have won the statewide Dora Maxwell Award, specifically the give back that we did for the 85th anniversary for the community, the employees and the local businesses. I think was just huge. It wasn't my win, but I think it was a win for the credit union. We've gotten a lot of press out of that and a lot of attention in terms of how to do things right when there's something huge that's affecting our members and our community and our employees. I think that was huge. And the last thing just came yesterday that I think is a really big win, but it's not one that I necessarily think we've gotten to the point of really patting ourselves on the back for, and that is our commercial lending group did a presentation with the senior C-level folks yesterday, where it came out that over 30% of all of their closed loans have been coming directly from inbound marketing, from HubSpot. He said from HubSpot, but it's from the efforts of this team. Obviously Kara and Tabitha had their hands in it the closest, but that we were able to pivot and meet with commercial lending, and Marilyn strategically putting it together, and Kara and Tabitha, executing on it was just, it was just huge. And the fact that it's now being recognized, again, to that point that Marilyn made earlier, of that marketing is finally being recognized as more than just the department with the pretty crayons. That was a really, really huge thing. Even with our whole ROI debacle, I'm calling that a debacle because it really sort of fell apart in terms of the meaning. I think this kind of drove it home in terms of actually looking at solid, real results that came directly from marketing. And I feel like that was a huge win.
Well, I'm gonna address that real fast, because when you think about 30% of commercial coming from digital inbound efforts, the impact that commercial has on the bottom line, knowing that these are bigger dollar. But I think it's a testament to the fact of the complexities of that commercial buying journey. There's a lot more points. It's not the and I've had some conversations with each of you individually about this, but it's not the old idea of direct response marketing. We do X to then get Y. We send out direct mail or place a billboard or run a TV ad, and then people come into the branch. There's so much that happens in the middle, attribution speaking. But for commercial to come in, and you're not saying it, it's that third-party validation that we talk about with behavioral economics. Commercials coming in and saying, hey, this is what marketing is creating. This is the value that marketing is creating for us. That's amazing. So
right. And not just in terms of commercial, but even what the team was able to do with the business development folks. Business development thrives on in-person events. I mean, that's the only way they can survive.
Mm-hmm.
So we thought, now they have come together, and the team were able to create a whole new page for business development. We bought in webinars from Balance, but we then recorded those and gave those to the team to actually have either live seminars or pre-recorded educational materials. So now it's like looking at business development a different way. And I think what I loved about this journey this year has been that this particular team would not let this pandemic stop us from creating the experiences that would be beneficial to our members, and not giving up on traditional thinking in a different way, and being able to take something very, very in person, make it digital, and still make it work. And in the process, saving excuse my language, shitload of money, because now we're able to give the BD folks PDFs instead of dorky printed flyers, sorry, and they're being successful, and we can actually put links into those PDFs where we can track them. So, and a PDF costs us $5, where printed flyers, we were spending hundreds upon thousands of dollars for no way of knowing what was happening with these things. So I think and that was something this team has been trying to sell the BD team for quite a while, but it took a pandemic to shift their behavior to see that they had no other choice but to do it this way. And golly gee willikers, it works.
Well, hearing you talk through that, I think one of the other savings that you've got out of this, if I recall previous conversations correctly, is you've saved time and frustration from having to fill all of the swag requests and the swag orders, which were, from my notes, a half-person role. Well, you shut those events down, that half person gets their time back to go do other meaningful things beyond just filling these. And I love the dorky PDFs or the dorky, the flyers. I want to make this note because it is top of mind for me. And this is kind of I see an opportunity, and it's not one that we've even identified on today's agenda, which is why I'm just going to hit the pause button real fast for you, if you don't mind. Kara, I've shared this platform with you. It's called Turtle, and Audrey has explored Turtle. Turtle is Turtl. Is that correct, Audrey? And yeah, if you could just put this in the notes too. Turtle is a platform that takes a beautiful kind of PDF and turns it into an interactive digital experience, which is great for business development. Furthermore, you can feed HubSpot data into Turtle to now personalize these quote unquote digital PDFs. They're not digital PDFs, it's an interactive experience. It's an interactive content experience. And the whole thing with Turtle is it's driven based upon human behavior and psychology. So all of the visual, it's digital visual communication. And we've seen, and we'll share a case study. So we're working with another firm right now called Total Expert, and they are leveraging a lot of our expertise as they're moving into the banking space. They got about 100 million worth of funding. They've been doing a lot on the mortgage side. They power like some of the top 10 banks mortgage programs. Great platform. But as they're coming into the traditional banking space, they saw the book and they were like, well, can we collaborate on a lot of this stuff? I said, yeah, let's have some fun. And so they've been using Turtle, and I'm going to we'll follow up with some just visual examples of how they've taken Turtle. They've taken, literally, to your point, Amy, a webinar. They took the webinar, repurpose that content into Turtle from a visual communication, and then they're using their BD teams to actually personalize that content when they're working with different prospects, and it's all powered by data.
That's actually something I would love to explore, because it would be awesome to be able to go the next step rather than just a regular PDF with links.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is that you're going to get, and Tabitha, this really kind of comes to your perspective, you're going to get the data and the analytics out of what are people viewing, what are people, and then you can put in interactive quizzes into the interactive PDF, so you can do some prospecting and intakes that can get fed over into HubSpot. I mean, we can literally probably explore this for an hour and get some really practical, but we don't have it on the agenda. But hearing you talk through that, it's just an opportunity that I thought was too good not to bring to the table for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
The only other thing I would say in terms of looking forward is really the focus for me going forward is just really focusing on experiences and mapping journeys, and finding ways for us to be able to make the digital experience as personal and human as we possibly can going forward, and using things like Paula's platform, which we did get approved to begin with. And that was something that I talked to Tabitha about too, is that we really kind of only have a year with them, and then we're going to have to build it ourselves, which we can do, but we will take the next year learning how to do that and then set it up, which I'm looking forward to. But that's probably my biggest things in terms of going forward. In terms of the past decade, I think just moving to Florida and from a personal standpoint, sort of leaving my kids behind almost. Me moving out of state was almost like the release of the umbilical cord. I don't know how else to say it, but it was really just, even though two of my daughters still live down here, they don't live with me. That my kids really, they're adults and they're on their own. And no time in the last 10 years have I felt that more than this past few days, with two kids in COVID and one kid with an emergency appendectomy. They really can do their own thing. So from a personal standpoint, the move down here was kind of huge in terms of me really becoming an empty nester. And just in terms of my digital growth over the last 10 years has been huge. That you had said it as I turned on the camera, you said something about the never-ending learning and training and always looking for opportunities to learn and grow. I think that in the last decade, I have done more of that than my entire adult life prior combined, which is great and is exciting. And part of it is because things change so often and so rapidly nowadays that you kind of have to keep that learning going. But working with this particular team, And when I came, Marilyn can attest, we had about 6 or 7 people in this department. But these 3 individuals are doing more and more efficiently and more strategically than those 7 did or 6 did prior. And I think Marilyn can probably attest to that being true, of how the synergy between these 4 individuals, these 3 individuals and myself, have been probably the best working relationship that I've ever had working with any teams in the past. That's both with television and in marketing. And I think because of that, we have been able to accomplish so much more. There's a trust and an inert trust between all of us that when things are changing quickly and rapidly and you have to pivot very quickly, that trust has allowed us to do that without creating any kind of bottlenecks with second guessing anybody. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. And once again, I'm starting to connect some dots here. Marilyn, what you had talked about before, the idea of the voice of the member, but also the voice of the team member. And Amy, when you had stepped off, we did a reverse pyramid of the org chart. And I think it's important to take that idea and we have a better visual for it, but to communicate the idea of the reverse org chart is community, account holders, sales, marketing, service. And I'm being very intentional with that, Marilyn, putting marketing in the middle between sales and service from a support mechanism. And then every operationally kind of flows below that. But hearing what you talked about too, you said a key word right here, and we'll take that pyramid and we'll flip it back on the other side. And this is what we call the pyramid of human relationship, right? So at the very bottom of that pyramid, we have respect. All positive relationships that create value are rooted in this right here. You lose this, you lose the foundation, you lose the whole relationship, you lose everything else going forward. And the reason that I'm bringing this to the forefront right now in this conversation is because you've talked about employee experience, you've talked about culture, you've talked about bringing Get Beyond Money internally. I think this type of thinking will help frame this conversation going forward and how to communicate all of this internally to others. So every relationship starts with respect. At the pinnacle of that relationship is love. And this is where people, I could see it already. People are going to get really uncomfortable with this conversation, bringing kind of Get Beyond Money internally. And we're talking about this idea of love, this touchy-feely stuff. This is banking. This is not emotion. Absolutely, it's emotion. Where I was just having a conversation with, I forgot where it was. Oh, it was with the organizational psychologist. We're having this conversation about money. And if we're taking Get Beyond Money, we can have these conversations in, I think it's the 11 o'clock hour. We also have to address people's money concerns internally, the money stress that our employees have internally, and be very empathetic to that. Because they think, oh, well, it's like we work at a credit union, we should have good money habits. Well, that's just not how it is. Otherwise, if we look at the data, 85% of people are stressed about money. That means that we're going to have some internal team members stressed about money. As a father of 4 who has to feed 4 growing kids' mouths, it's insane. So none of us are immune to this. So we have respect, we have love, but then to your point, Amy, what you just said, how do you bridge that gap? It's this right here. It is the trust. But I think you have to define what that is internally. Trust is 2 sides of the coin. It's what you say, so it's your words, but then it's what you do. It's your actions. What you say and what you do, you combine those together, Marilyn. That's where it comes back to. That's the member experience, yes, but bringing Get Beyond Money internally, it will be about the employee experience and how are you going to market to the employees to get their buy-in, to transform their thinking, and ultimately transform their behavior when it comes to them being the micro-marketing machine of one to become the individual Get Beyond Money advocate, to where Get Beyond Money is really driving their driving purpose. So I think you're hitting on some really, really good points. And now we're starting to connect some dots, and it's just the first hour of today's conversation. So, Amy, anything else before we wrap up this part of the discussion?
No, I think that I hope I hit all the questions that you were asking.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. We're in a really good place. We're right here at the 9 o'clock hour. Because we're in a virtual digital format, I'm very intentional of everyone's energy. And since we're running just a little bit late on timing, let's just take 5. Is everyone good with 5? Let's just take 5. Pause your cameras, pause your microphone. We're going to come back in 5 minutes. That'll be 9:07 Central. And then we'll start getting into future thinking, and we'll come back and do one of the exercises that we didn't get a moment to do. We'll wrap the day with that thinking there, because I think it'll be right in line. So take 5.
Good.
We'll see you in a second. And we are back. Wait for Marilyn, and we'll wait for Tabitha. There you are, Marilyn. And we will continue on with the conversation. Starting to get future thinking. While Tabitha's hopping back on, I just want to commend every one of you. I appreciate the personal perspectives that you shared earlier in the first hour. So thank you very much for that. It's always good to hear those good stories. And we had a good bottle of wine this week, and my wife and I. It's called Chronology. And Chronology, beautiful statement on the bottle. It talks about the magic that can happen when you open up a bottle. It's great marketing. It talked about the magic that happens when you open up a bottle with family and friends. But on the cork, the little things that stood out to me. I was seeing if I have it in my pocket. It says "Live in the moment." On the side of the cork, it just says "Live in the moment," and I'm like, what great brand experience, because I was like, I'm gonna hold on to that. So let's go ahead and get into this. We're gonna take this hour here to talk through two different areas: building workflows to mirror what we're setting up with One Financial, with the pearls and the onboarding, number one. And then number two, looking just at onboarding in general, redefining the target based on products members start with. And so we're going to frame this conversation, and Audrey, this is where we can capture some good notes as well, is what are the goals for each one of these? What are the roadblocks that might stand in the way? And I really want to get these roadblocks out on the table in these conversations, because that's what's going to be the detriment to this. And the more, as always, that we can get those conversations out now, the better it is, so we're not getting surprised by them as we move forward with these initiatives. And then three, what are some of the other opportunities that are available to be created or captured, or the strength that you have currently that you can capitalize on? So I'm going to facilitate this, and we're going to start with this idea of building workflow to mirror what we're setting up with One Financial. So contextually speaking, and Amy, you addressed this before, and Tabitha, I'm really excited that you're going to be helping make this a reality. Because if I go back to your original blueprint, we shared some of this type of thinking back in 2015. Now it's becoming a reality to create these personal pages. And Tabitha, you can build upon that experience this year. You talked about personalization. So everything that you have in One Financial, you can do in HubSpot. It's just going to take some time. So I think using that as a bridge. So let's talk through, what are the goals, the primary goals, and there's no right or wrong answer when it comes to achieving these objectives. And so the way that I'm going to frame this is we're going to take a big idea, and we're going to look at this through the lens of a year. So we're having this conversation November of 2021, thinking about this idea of setting up workflows to mirror what you're doing with One Financial with pearls and onboarding. What has to happen between now until then for you to first and foremost feel good about the progress that you're making on that part of this journey? So a 12-month perspective, looking backwards from November of 2021 through this lens of mirroring the onboarding with One Financial. What are those goals?
I think that one of the biggest goals is moving toward that personalization of digital, to get back to that one-to-one type of marketing, rather than the throwing everything at a wall and to see what sticks. To really focus in on ensuring we're only presenting what makes sense to that member and addressing them by name.
Mm-hmm.
One thing too that just made me think of this, and it's a question for Tabitha. When I was going through doing the, was looking at the Faraday list, and what's the word I'm looking for? What's the word I'm looking for? Reconcile. God dang, it's driving me crazy. When I was reconciling Faraday and actually through Branch Suite, one of the records I saw on Branch Suite in terms of contact information was gender. And gender is in the member record. And the reason I bring that up is because a lot of times we did not know how to, like, especially when we were doing first emails and we wanted to be somewhat formal, we didn't know if we could say Ms. or Mr. or whatever. And gender is in there. Not saying that we want to go backwards to not using first names and going to Ms. and Mr., but I think that would help us in terms of addressing these folks in terms of knowing what their gender is to a certain degree. I know.
Yeah, I was gonna jump on the whole DEI because what's the identification of said gender, because I don't know if that would create conflict.
Well, the one thing that I was going to tie this in to the fact that also there's been a couple forms that I have received recently that have forced you to answer the very first question of Ms., Mr., Miss. I think those are the three choices. Is that the three choices? So that person could self-identify, and therefore it's not necessarily going directly from the record of Branch Suite. But if we had that, if somebody identified as a Mr., but the gender is female, if there was a way that in HubSpot we could say, okay, those two don't match, so go with what the person chose, not with what the record is. So that was what I was going to say. It would allow us to have a more personalized experience for the person based on what they are identifying as, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. So one of the primary goals would be a more personalized and I'm going to get even more detailed with this, a more personalized communication experience.
Yes.
A more personalized communication experience. And the way that I can see this is it can be a more personalized communication experience really through three channels: email, landing page. I'm going to add two more: video.
Oh.
Video communication, and physical communication. And I'm not going to use the word direct mail, but personalized physical communication. And we'll talk more about that here in a moment with an opportunity that I see as you're dialoguing through this. Audrey, can you repeat that real fast, what I just said? You're muted.
Yep. Email, landing page, video, physical.
Personalized communication.
Personalized, yep.
Got it. So that's a key goal with this. Any other key goals from you, Amy, or others?
In terms of personal, just again, allowing us to take the modeling from Faraday to feed into these pages so that if they're on smart lists, created smart lists for certain products or services, that those are then served up in the variable dynamic models on their personalized page.
Got it. So that's goal number 2, taking the models from Faraday and using those as a way to create these personalized, and I'm going to keep coming back to this word, personalized communication experiences. And Audrey, I'd like to add a 5th channel for personalization. Kara, this comes to what you're already kind of starting to experiment and play with now. Same thing, Tabitha, is utilizing those Faraday lists, because this is all about onboarding. But if we're going to create these dynamic lists can then feed dynamic lists in other ad channels. So now it becomes a personalized multi-channel ad experience. So you can even do as part of the onboarding process and experience, and no one's doing this right now. You serve up ads as part of the onboarding experience, but it's ads that are all about taking the next best step. So that communication is being reinforced through multiple channels.
Could you potentially do something? So onboarding comes in many facets. So for example, somebody can be onboarded because they opened a loan. So could you technically then do it like this? Onboard them, but serve them an onboarding ad that says, okay, so now that you've got your auto loan, the next step is to open up a checking account. That way we can kind of bring them over and sell them products. Could you do that?
No, it is. And that's something that, once again, I've been speaking about for 5, 6, 7 years, is onboarding needs to be done at the product level, not just the new account level. And so the way that I'm going to frame this is really just come back to the model right here, the banker strategy circle, to where we build an audience with data, we attract leads with personalized offers, we nurture those leads through automation and content, and then we convert them for loans and deposits. Amy, you talked about journey mapping. Like, this is such a great strategic thinking tool to use when looking at journey mapping, because this is why. You've added an extreme amount of complexity, Kara, inadvertently, and it's a great thought, but I just wanted to bring this because this is a potential roadblock now, is where do we begin? What do we start with? There's so much opportunities available that it becomes too complex, too overwhelming. So, because right now, everything that we're talking about with this personalized onboarding communication experience is in this quadrant right here. And E stands for expand relationships by delighting accounts. So if you're going to do this, we need to identify and prioritize how we are going to start these efforts. Is it with checking? Is it with auto? Is it with mortgage? Is it with credit card? Because now we have 4 products doing this through this lens here. Just like anything, start with one. Where are you getting? And I think here it's you can look at this 2 sides of the coin. Is it something that, are we getting the greatest volume from these onboarding experiences, number 1, or number 2, we might not be getting as much volume, but this is where we can create the greatest value from these personalized communications. So, for example, you might be getting an extreme amount of volume with auto, but if we know that checking is the lifeblood of the future of the organization from a deposit standpoint, we might not be getting the volume, but we're getting the value creation to try to get checking to be the PFI for whoever these individuals are. So, great point, Kara. Thank you. And that's why, Amy, coming back to this idea of member experience, and I've been thinking a lot about this, we can take each one of these elements within this buying journey, because banker is aligned to the consumer buying journey. This is the operational method here. Instead of trying to eat the well, we just focus on one of these aspects within the overall member experience per product line. Because when you're looking at this as a whole, you have top of funnel, BAN, you have conversion, C, and then you have bottom of funnel, expand the relationships by delighting account. And then we have the R, which is to repeat the process with reviews, ratings, and referrals, which I know is on the agenda for later today, which directly ties into kind of this onboarding. So now we got some connectivity happening with these 2 different initiatives. Any other goals when it comes to taking what ChannelNet is? Yes.
I have a couple questions and then a goal. So my first question is to Amy. When you talked about using the models from Faraday for personalizing these messages, were you talking about the propensity to buy a product, or were you talking about the personas?
Propensity to buy.
Perfect. And then I guess my other, it's a goal / question is, how do we set this up so that it's not so complex that it doesn't take up so much of our time that we're not going to be able to actually do it. And then the other goal is to sort of minimize, because remember, when we're onboarding a member, everybody wants to talk to them. Lending, new accounts, the branch, investment and insurance, our third-party vendors, everybody wants a piece of them. So how do we organize it so that, I'm thinking of, like, for example, my Peloton, or when I just joined Amazon Prime. I've been onboarded so smoothly that I really understand what services I have available and which ones I want and which ones I don't, because they didn't bombard me with stuff. They've like a piece at a time have told me what's available to me, and they've, I guess, gauged my interest and repeated stuff I've shown interest in, haven't
Yes.
repeated stuff I haven't. So how do we, like, we're little, we're not Amazon, but how do we set it up so that we have what the member can, I guess, the appetite of the member in mind, not just our efficiency?
Yeah, that's a great question. The way that I would start thinking this through is, what are you wanting to communicate? Because in HubSpot, and Tabitha, you might be able to speak to this as well. I'm thinking email communication or landing page communication. You have content modules, and those content modules is what can drive all of this additional communication from a personalization standpoint. And this could be something around even like almost like a choose your own adventure. If you recall those books from the late 80s, early 90s, you can gauge that interest based upon, like, so you set some initial, maybe like 3 communication touch points. What are they clicking on? What are they engaging with? And then that creates a secondary communication touch point. So now you have these different lists. So for example, it might be, and you used a great analogy of, we got all these people who want to get their hands on them. Well, everyone's at a different stage. So the introductory might be some articles, and it could be help first, that's help first, self second perspective of, you've got stuff coming from mortgage, you've got stuff coming from lending, you've got stuff coming from wealth and financial advisory. Well, based upon what they're engaging with, then use that as the secondary communication list or the tertiary communication list. And the way that I would look at this is almost like doing a 3x3 matrix. So here are the 3 opportunities that we have to communicate with them. And that 3x3 matrix then informs the personalization on the emails. And that personalization is powered by list. Because if you think about this, what you do, and it all comes back to data, what you do with those lists is what you're going to have to then to share and show within these personalized emails. And it's not about creating 3 emails. It's about creating 1 email with these personalized content modules that you can slot these different pieces of content in. But the thing you have to remember, this comes back to Kara, is you would have to create 3 different pieces of content. And it's not, I'm not talking content from like a blog article. I'm just talking content for whatever those elements are in those either landing pages or in those emails. So a 3x3 matrix would help to really frame this down from a prioritization standpoint.
I think Amazon does do a good job of that, because I flip back and forth between Prime all the time. I cancel it and then I do it, cancel it and then do it. But they're pretty good about sending you an initial email that says, here's the range of services we have. Like, pick which one you like the best. And they have them all listed. They'll have their music. They'll have like their grocery stuff. They'll have video. So that way they know what to sell you on. The other company that I actually think does pretty good with that is Fabletics. Fabletics is really good because they have that introductory quiz. So that way they can gauge what type of outfits, so to say, or like what's your style. And that way they know, are you a leggings person? Do you like whole outfits? Do you like just sports tops? And they know what type to sell you. So are you a yoga person? Are you super athletic? I think they do a good job with that.
See, something like that was more like, I think for right now, what I can wrap my mind around, because when James Roberts explaining the 3x3, so basically we'd have to have like a blank email template with all these selections of different modules that we're going to pop in based on what they opened with. And in addition to that, based on what Faraday is providing us with, what their propensity to buy. To me, that just sounds really complex. And I'll be honest, I don't know how to do that. I do know how to set up like some introductory questions and try to get some information from them. and then use that to base our next communication on. Because then we can set up workflows where if they selected this box, then they get this email. If they selected this box, then they, you know what I'm saying? So that I can wrap my mind around and know how to do it. But what James Robert and Amy have described, I think we're gonna need help with, because I can't think of how to do that. And maybe Tabitha's over there already doing it. But I can't.
She's halfway done right now.
Yeah. I just can't wrap my mind around how we're going to do that.
The best way that I could describe this is, and this is where my MIS background comes into play. Think of these as like light switches, on and off, ones and zeros. So if something is a 1, it's true, meaning you turn it on and you show whatever piece of data whatever piece of content that is informed by the data. If it's a 0, then it's off. And I can share how this thinking has been applied with another financial brand as a follow-up to this, if you'd like, because they literally have like it's a email that has these on and off switches to where if something is true, next best product or recommended product, then it shows said piece of content or information. If it's false, they don't show that at all as a CTA. That then informs, so like right here, let's say this is a 1, this is a 0, this is a 1 right here. So in this email, you would see communication A, you would see communication C. Follow so far, Marilyn? Now, this is where the lists come into play. If person receives communication A and communication C, let's say they just engage with A. Check. So they get put into the A list. Then, because they've been put into the A list, now they receive this piece of content and this piece of content. But what's all powering that? It's communication A, B, and C, not channel communication. Communication that's been packaged up into an email, first and foremost. Choose your own adventure takes them to what then the next selection is. And what they see in that first piece of communication, what they see right here, that those 1s and 0s, that's informed by what you're getting from Faraday, the propensity.
I think one of the challenges will just be the fact that there's just so many different ways for them to be able to obtain a particular product. And then the fact that it's delayed by 24 hours. I think that we kind of have to find like a happy medium in terms of how to convey the message, and then it not be like, oh, okay, they just happen to apply for auto loan online, and then they need additional help, so they call a call center, and then the call center says, hey, we just noticed that you did it today. We can then now offer you a credit card because we have your credit report. So then us providing them information in this email in regards to credit card or auto when they've really already had it, you know, or they've already been offered this based off of the sales team. So I think it's obviously a good strategy to go. It's just having the understanding that there, you know, may be hiccups along the way in terms of what products to provide them.
You said 24 hours of delay. So when we have a new member, within 24 hours, we're getting back from Faraday what model they fall into?
No, not Faraday. For Loans PQ. So Loans PQ reports every 24 hours is all. So like if I apply today, I don't know that there's an application in the portal until tomorrow morning.
Okay, so how does the onboarding work, Amy? Like when we open up a new account for a member, how often is Faraday picking that up and being able to drop them in a model for propensity? Are we gonna?
That's monthly, but keep in mind what the model's feeding into the personalized page. That's where I don't see the models necessarily being used for onboarding. I mean, originally to give us an idea of if a person comes in with opens an auto loan, then let the model tell us what the next best product would be, or what is it that was it the journey that people are going through to tell us how to onboard them with the next product based on the models, what they say. But in terms of what Faraday's feeding into for these personalized URLs, they're just going to be modules on the page. And so it being on the, once the model feeds into Faraday once a month, then the smart list will then create these modules on the page. If I wasn't saying that these modules will change every single day, those will change based on the models feeding in. The only thing that maybe we could do is that if they start an application for whatever product that is, if there's a way that then HubSpot goes, oh, they started it, drop that module from their personalized URL. But that's how I saw the models feeding into these personalized URLs, not necessarily for on the spot onboarding. The onboarding part of it using the models would just tell us how we set people up as they come in. But the actual page, their personalized URL, the modules will change based on once a month Faraday coming in and saying, okay, here's your new propensity list. Everybody on this list is high propensity for auto, so start showing them the auto module. As soon as they start an application or they click through and start an application from that module, the module can then drop off because they've now started the product. But they can stay up there as long as they haven't actually started the product or submitted an application.
So I'm understanding now. So I was thinking like onboarding in terms of sending out communications, which we're going to send out communications, but you're talking about more feeding what's going to be displayed on their Pearl, which is a long-term, that they're always going to have access to their Pearl. And that's where we're going to know what information to be serving to them each time they access it based on what Faraday's models are.
Right. And then for onboarding, what I wanted the models to do is just say, okay, here's these, let's say 3 different models. One is somebody coming in with a mortgage, this is somebody coming in with a checking, and this is somebody coming in with an auto loan. So after the models run, after a while, I mean, it's not going to be exact, it's going to be averages. For the most part, when people come in with an auto, the checking is the very next product. So when somebody comes in with an auto, we will then trigger a checking communication, electronics, using us, the Pocket Branch, whatever. That will be the communication that will be triggered, which will be different from a person opening a checking account. Faraday says somebody coming in with a checking account, the next best product that seemed to be happening is an auto loan. So the person who opened a checking account then will be served up the auto communication through an email or a postcard. But the page itself will only be updated once a month because those models will be exact. These are the smart lists. This person is on this list, therefore it's going to be on this module. The onboarding will be a little less exact because we don't have this every single day updates from Faraday. We're just going to use Faraday to tell us what are the average, what are most people doing once they come in with a checking or once they come in with an auto? What's the progression of product services we should be feeding them or content we should be feeding them to keep them engaged? Does that make sense?
Yes, big clarification there too. I'm going to repeat it so just in case the team understood it just like I did. So in terms of sending the initial email, Faraday is going to help us with a model to identify what somebody with X product gets the next communication on. But that's not ongoing and that's not going to be a smart list. That's going to be sort of like a recipe. Now we know people that open auto are going to get a checking piece. People that open mortgage are going to get an auto piece. And then we're going to set up our communications that way.
Yes.
Got it.
And we can, and as those models get smarter, it may change. Like after maybe 3-4 months, Faraday may come back and go, you know what, there's a shift. People who are now opening auto, they're less likely to do checking. Now it seems they're all wanting to go into a credit card so that we can then shift our onboarding for the next best communication piece and content based on how smart those models are getting over time. So that is sort of I love what you said. It's a recipe, but it's a recipe that could change over time. We just have to watch it and see what the models are saying over time. But the smart lists are those propensity lists that will be uploaded once a month, and we would only drop it if they did actually take out an application or hit the thank you page for the application So we know they've actually submitted an application for that. Then we'll drop that from their list of items that would be on their personalized page.
I'm gonna hop in real fast. So as you've been talking through, this is a very simple model right here, but this is, Amy, something that you and I had talked about. Login page, right? Login page, personalized content. You're already doing this somewhat here, but all of this personalized content, you can even personalize the content down here. You can add another content block. And so each one of these, that's why I have A, B, C, D. Each one of these, that's being informed by the data being fed in from Faraday or from wherever. If they're in list A, show them A. If they're in list B, show them list B. And once again, this is where the ones and the zeros, the trues and the false can come into play. Now, Marilyn, coming back, if they engage with said ad, now we know there's some type of engagement. So we take the proactive stance and saying, oh, they got checking, next best product is auto. They engage in auto. We know that there's an interest with that. So what do? We put them into a drip series of emails, 1, 2, 3, 4, however many. All of that is the help first, sell second. We've got an auto buying guide. Here's how you calculate. Here's how you don't get screwed by the dealer. This is why pre-approval. And that's what I was saying, doing a 3x3 matrix, because you start with 3 products and then 3 pieces of communication per product. That way it's not so overwhelming when it comes to like creating these communication patterns and these communication methods. The other thing too is, and to your point, Amy, once they exit that activity, they hit the thank you page, would be the identifier for that. Then they would no longer get any of these emails. They would be removed out of that because that would be a bad experience. This same type of thinking, because it's all being driven by list, is exactly where you can deploy ads to that product experience, feeding the emails up into Google or into Facebook or into any ad channel. And Kara, I have a follow-up, Mark, from our last call of what are all the different ways you can use email as an identifier to serve up personalized ads, because now it's becoming multi-channel, right? Now, based upon someone's activity on this ad or this piece of content or this piece of content, doesn't really matter to me what piece of content, then they get put into that next series. So we're not blasting them with emails about auto unless they engage. So they're raising their digital hand. Not only do we show them that auto email series, we show them the auto ad, and that's all dynamic. And if they hit the thank you page, they immediately stop seeing those auto ads. They immediately stop getting the auto email. Does that help, Marilyn, to visualize this a little bit further for you? Thumbs up? We're good? Okay, excellent. So go ahead.
What happens if in an ideal world they are a fully engaged member and have all products with us? They have a checking account, they have a savings account, they have an auto, they have a credit card. They may not be in the market for a CD because they're just not that type of clientele, but say that they have all the core products with us, then what does this content look like?
That's a great point. So then you would have to have, that's why I have D, then you would need to have some type of a default content that would just slot in if A is not true, B is not true, C is not true, else D. If
yes.
A,
and that
then.
would be like general things that are going on around the credit union, or just helpful content around the season, some blog content, things that, like you said, if nothing else fits, then, and maybe we could even set it up so depending on, are they a new member, within the last few years, or if they've been here a really long time, we can maybe personalize the content a little bit in terms of how long they've been with us, or what products they do have, how engaged they are. Maybe it's even a referral. Maybe we run a referral campaign based on how long they've been with us rather than send it out to everybody. I mean, there are other things that we can default to that aren't necessarily just sales, modules or blocks, but then everybody would see them if they don't have 3 things of sales that they fall in, then we'd have this other information or content that could be helpful for them.
Like, you bring up a great point, and that's where we have these 2 different modules. And I, Marilyn, to your perspective, this is the complexity. Well, we could add a 3rd content module. Well, you're adding a 3rd piece of complexity. Crawl, walk, run. You know, so.
Okay. Go easy on me, please.
Yeah. That's why I'm like jumping in, because you bring up a great point. So you have your promo module here, but then below that, you have your referral module sitting below. And the reason I say your referral module, because that could be a simple on-off switch once again. If they've been a member for, you know, a year or 2, or whatever that is, show them this. I would actually take that even a step further, and not just their membership age. What is their net promoter score? Only show this to your promoters, because it would really be a bad experience showing this to your detractors, maybe your neutrals, particularly if you can incentivize against this. And we'll talk more about that here in a later hour for today's conversation. But now you're turning this page not only into a personalized marketing communication experience, you're also turning this page into an acquisition opportunity via referrals. But you don't want to ask everyone for referrals. And Audrey, you saw this case study yesterday for another financial brand with what Simple has done over the years. And we can share this as a follow-up as well, because it literally takes the communication patterns from Simple and breaks it down from the time of referral all the way through the nurturing of that potential account holder to the point of conversion, and then into the entry levels of onboarding with them. But even with Simple, one of the things that they've done is they have actually added referral CTA in online banking, in mobile banking, right next to the logout button, because that is the most active area. So coming all of this full circle, you have a promotion area content block, you have some type of referral content block. And it might not necessarily, one month it might be referral, the next month, because for example, maybe we want to get referrals from some people. Maybe then the next month we want to ask them to rate their experience on Google so we can increase our Google opportunity. So that's why I'm looking at this as 2 different opportunities of engagement. Personalized marketing communication, acquisition opportunities. So we've identified very specific goals coming back, which Audrey, I know that you've documented. We've identified some roadblocks, and those roadblocks are really going to sit into, and Tabitha, making not wanting to overwhelm you. It's about identifying those 3 areas. And that's why I said 3 by 3 to begin with this, and then building upon that. So when we're having this conversation again next year, it's like, okay, we've got auto, we've got checking. To me, like, if you keep saying auto checking credit card, well, those are the 3 natural products, it seems like to me, that are kind of like bubbling up to the surface with these conversations to begin implementing against this type of thinking.
Well,
I was going to say, I think because they're the easiest products. Like, to me, that's something somebody doesn't have to think too much about.
Mm-hmm.
And then the fact that credit card is just a natural upgrade for them anyways, because they happen to have, or a natural upgrade for sales anyways, because they happen to have the, the credit report right in front of them. And it's something that they don't have to pull additional credit for. So a lot of times those are done in conjunction. Yep. If it's a member that's, speaking to, but then, and then not to add another level of complexity, but then you also have to almost tie in like refinance, right? Because, okay, you've had the product for X amount of years. Like you've had a car loan for, I don't know, say 2 years. Is 2 years the right time to be like, okay, well, now here's a refinance that may be available to you?
I would totally leave the sales up to the Faraday list, rather the propensity list, rather than us saying, They've been had an auto loan for 2 years, so now it's time to get another one. Might not be time for them. If they appear on the Faraday propensity list, then definitely.
And that's where
Thinking
Are you
was,
doing a refi list? I thought the propensity was just for new products.
Well, it depends on how you look at it. A new product, if it's, we don't want to refinance our own loans. It would be, if they would be getting a new car, whether they're the type of person who upgrades every couple of years with new cars.
and that real fast, Kara, that because every time that you add like a new product to that matrix, you're also adding new communication as well. You're adding new landing page communication, and then you're adding new workflow communication, and then you're adding new email communication. So just think about that. Like, and if I was to frame this out, like data, Faraday data drives landing page content. So we have data driving content, landing page content driving email workflow, driving ad workflow, driving personalized video, which we'll come back to that point here later, and even driving personalized physical communication. All of that can be automated, but it's just every extra data point that you're adding to the propensity model, it's just we're adding that additional step. So I love what you said, Marilyn, because I think that's how you operationalize this. You have a cookbook, you have a recipe book, meaning for me to make this cake, I need A, B, C, D. And that's what I was just trying to talk through and communicate. We have data. Data informs landing page content module. So we need whatever that content module is to look the visual communication of that. Then we have email workflow. We need 3 to 5, 6 emails, however many you want to start with in there. We have personalized ad campaign. So we need the creative for that. So does that help you with the recipe thinking behind this? Like kind of almost like an operationalized checklist?
For Marilyn?
For Marilyn.
Yeah. Oh, definitely for me. And I also feel that once we have what is it, one-click financial, we're gonna have some additional I guess technical guidance on how they set this stuff up, and we'll be able to learn more from them as well.
Yes. Kara, coming over to you.
yeah, I actually, all of this kind of brings up an opportunity / strength. So if we're still speaking metaphorically, I do think next year might be a vegan cookbook. And what I mean by this is that it's going to have the same foundation of what a cookbook is. The recipe might be the same, but things are going to be altered because I think we do kind of, in this whole conversation, 2021 is not that far away. We're still in the midst of a pandemic. So we're talking auto loans, but the data might not even show that. People aren't driving right now, and they still might not be next year. So I think it's going to be like a vegan cookbook, because who knows, like what we might have traditionally brought people on with might not be necessarily what the data is going to show. Who knows, maybe we're going to start going into the realm of like personal loans instead of auto loans. You know what I mean? So I think that's one thing that is going to serve as an opportunity and a strength, is that we're going to be trying different things, and we might be perfecting things that we haven't in the past.
We also, Faraday has been running certain models for certain products now for 2 years. And that's what I think we have to use, the models that they already have set up as our first steps. And we know we have a checking model. We know we have a mortgage model. We know we have an auto model. We do not have a credit card model, and I do not believe we have a personal loan. Do we have a personal loan? We don't have a personal loan model with Faraday, right? So the other models, there's a churn model, which also could help us, because the churn model could create communication opportunities for us, for those that appear on that churn model, in terms of trying to retain that customer or member. But my point is that you're absolutely right about auto. We don't know, but there's still auto lists that are coming out. There are still a propensity, and Faraday is still saying that we're getting auto loans because of those lists. So it may not be as large of a list as it was prior to pandemic, but it still exists. And so I think we just have to kind of follow the models that are running right now. And once we get these things in place, we can then look to Faraday or even as we start, we can say, okay, now we want to start modeling for personal loans, credit cards, I don't know, referrals, family, I don't know, some other modeling that they can start, because we're not going to ever use a model result that they have after 1 month. We let those models go several months for it to get smarter, to ensure that it's smart enough that when we're putting it out in front of them on their personalized URL, that it makes sense and we're not just, again, throwing spaghetti at the wall, guessing what they want. So you're absolutely right, but I just think that we already have these models in place. They've been running through the pandemic. We've already know there's really only 2 different models that have been changed since the pandemic, and that was mortgage and churn. Those are the only 2 models that have really shown any kind of real change in consumer behavior. So we have the models, they are running, they are working. So let's use those products first, and then we can determine as we launch this to create new models and let them run. So after 6 months that they've been running, then we're comfortable enough with the whole process that we can add these additional products in.
Absolutely. And I was going to add to that point. So you have these models identified, coming back to Maryland, you have these models identified. That's the foundational elements of your cookbook or of your recipes that you're going to be creating for each one of these cakes. And I like the metaphors because it makes the intangible, starts to make it tangible. So if I was to like name this internally, like I would call it like the auto loan cake, I would call it the checking account cake, I would call it the what was the other one? The churn cake. And so now it's like, use that, because each one of these models will need X pieces of number of content for X number of channels. So once again, coming back to those 5 channels: landing pages, emails, personalized smart video.
And how do we do video? I'm sorry, but that threw me for a loop when you said video, because I don't know how personalized that. But okay, go ahead.
We'll come back to that, and I've actually started to take some notes of like things to follow up with right here, kind of like these like little one-offs to fill in the blanks, ads, and also the physical mail communication. Exactly, all of that can be set up in workflow within HubSpot. So I will fill in some of the blanks as a follow-up to that. But I just wanted to, Marilyn, I want you to leave feeling like, you know what, I've got this. I know where we need to go. We're going to have to think through it more, but we've identified the goals, the roadblocks, the opportunities. But from a technicality standpoint, is it starting to come together conceptually?
Yeah, yes, conceptually, that's what I needed to kind of solidify what it is that we're doing. And I just want to say 2 things. First of all, churn cake sounds really gross. And second of all, we might want to consider, okay, we'll do the metaphors, like side dishes, right? We know that we need members to have direct deposit because it makes them stay with us. Yes. So there may be some pieces in there that are not based on Faraday model, like something like somebody doesn't have direct deposit, and then include that module. And then we can kind of give them a level of importance and just kind of make them a side dish on.
Good point. Electronic services too. Yeah, you're absolutely right. There are other things we want them to have that aren't going to be modeled out.
Yeah. And this is really future thinking to come back. I think, have this conversation because you've got a good foundation in 2021 with this type of thinking applied. The next one is, okay, well, where else can we look for these opportunities? And I'm not saying don't even put this on your list. This is an opportunity, but a future thinking opportunity. It's looking at what I would call third-party aggregate data. Meaning, what are the third-party transactions that they have elsewhere at the B of A's, at the Chase? For example, if they have a reoccurring account, and you might be able to even do this with your current data, like if they have an ACH for $1,000 that goes to B of A every 30 days, it's probably a mortgage or Wells Fargo. So there's some hypothetical thinking that you could do around that and say, move your mortgage over to us. Stop losing money, move your mortgage, refi, et cetera, et cetera. So there's that third-party aggregation data that use what you have, but then there's a third-party data to make those proactive offers to help them stop losing and start saving even more money.
Like we could actually, thinking about it, Savvy Money. We could pull, we have those lists that we could create from Savvy Money that also could feed in to help Smart List. And that Savvy Money actually has the data of they're paying a car loan at this rate to somebody that's not you. So we can pull that in.
And with that being said, I would start with Faraday, prioritize. Start with Faraday, checking auto churn cakes, checking auto churn, and then and more right, and then start using that third party data, because I think that third part, because once again, foundation, build a foundation. This content module is informed by Faraday. This content module is informed by referral request or review request. This content module in the future would be informed by third-party data. So now we have 3 content modules that we've built and layered upon, you know, month after month or quarter after quarter or year after year. But there's the third element that I'm thinking with this. So we have that personalized landing page, that email once a month. I would call it a personalized recommendation letter, or you know, your monthly recommendations, and that's how it has to be framed. That's how the content has to be framed within that. Where does that email where does the content from the email come from? It comes from the same exact content that you're driving for the landing page, just framed from a recommendation. Like, that's the recommendation engine that we traditionally would see from, say, like an Amazon. You know, you looked at this, so now we recommend these products, but you're sending a person your monthly recommendations to help you get beyond money. And now you start framing and tying it back to the brand. Because we're not pushing a product, we're recommending something based upon your unique situation.
I have a quick question. I guess, Amy, when we start this with this company, it's not based off of Faraday information, is it?
What do you mean?
So we're going to start now or soon with this new company, right?
Yeah.
The One Fifth Financial. So how are they populating? How is it that they're going to be populating the offers? What, based off of what?
Yes, it will be. It will be with Faraday or any other third-party data source we want to plug in. We want to plug in Prism. We want to plug in, and I had told them I want everything to actually end up going through HubSpot, not through their engines, so that we have that history in HubSpot and not sitting over on some other servers that they're running.
Okay.
But yes, it's coming from Faraday or whatever else we want to plug in.
Because coming back, the goal that we're talking through right now is specifically around building workflows to mirror what they're doing, because they have something that can come out of the gate, but you have the capabilities internally to build this out. So it's a pilot program with that platform, but then at the same time, it's applying what you learn to build it out on HubSpot. So it's something that it's another asset that you own within marketing and are not having to license or lease from a third party.
Yeah, I was just curious as to if we didn't have Faraday, how does anybody else start the program? Like, how is it that they then take that data? Are they then doing it based off of like Meridian Link, where
it's from their data warehouses? It is directly from whatever data warehouse or data lake or whatever. They set it up through every institution is going to be different. It just depends on what third-party data sources they have that they can bring in to help with these personalized recommendations. I don't think any of them are going to be as smart as actual AI modeling, but I don't know how the others. It just depends on what they have.
Yep.
You know, some of them have, they have cores that are super smart because they have open API structures that they're able to plug all this information in the core, like a DNA, and so they're just getting the information directly from the core. Just depends.
All right. So we've just talked through really kind of 2 areas right here, because they're kind of hand in hand together, but it's building the workflow to mirror what we're setting up with One Financial, but it's also, as we've talked through, it's that onboarding to target members, which is really coming back to the auto cake, the checking cake, and the churn cake, and then the third-party data opportunities as well.
I think we should just stop calling them cakes. We're all trying to diet here.
Smoothies.
Okay.
Smoothies.
Makes sense.
So we've talked goals, roadblocks,
Pizza
opportunities.
cake. You can come to my cycle class. I'll help you out.
It'll be a net zero. It'll be you eat the cake and then you get a cycle, and it's a net zero. Any other questions before we go to our next break? How do you guys feel? Thumbs up? Feel good?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go ahead. Let's take another 5. We'll come back 10:07, 11:07, and then we'll start getting into Get Beyond Money, folding that in to the overall brand culture, and then also talk a little bit about content as well. Content being the fuel of the digital growth engine. With everything, and you can even see now, just with this the second hour, content is going to drive all of this communication. And so it's about thinking and planning, whiteboarding, checklisting, everything, all the different pieces of content to make this a reality. So great job last hour. Thank you very much. We're going to come back, take 5, and then we'll continue. And we are back.
You have a guest.
I see that.
Yeah, Kiki came.
Cute.
I can't hear you, sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Hey guys, I am back, but I have to run back outside. My dogs are not coming in. So go ahead without me. I'll be right back.
All right. So in this hour on the agenda, the primary focus is talking about folding Get Beyond Money up into the corporate brand. I'm going to have a lot of follow-up thoughts around this. But before that, I just wanted to go once again, let's go through this exercise. We're having this conversation a year from now. You're in a really good place with Get Beyond Money being folded up into the corporate brand. What has to happen between now until then for you to feel good about the progress there? So getting ahead and looking backwards. Can you articulate that?
How long? Just having a conversation like next year about it?
Yeah. So if we're looking, once again, if we're looking at Get Beyond Money, it's the November of 2021. Get Beyond Money has been folded up into the website, the blog, social media, and the Tropical. It's been built into the brand, to the culture. What has to happen between now until then for you to feel good about the progress that you're making on this part of the journey?
That's a hard one.
Yeah.
I think we kind of need Amy for this one a little bit because she's gotten more feedback in terms of what senior management's looking for. If you ask our team,
Absolutely.
we want to see engagement. We want to see people taking the quizzes. We want to see them coming in to get coached. We want to see them engaging with the program and getting value from it. Now, I don't know if that's going to be our goal because I don't know what we're being measured on.
Right.
I also think some type of cohesiveness as well, I guess, because of, we started, obviously the idea was to start with millennials and coaching, and then we didn't kind of really see millennials. We saw more people who were like, in debt because of, divorces, or were in debt because of whatever reason in life, but it wasn't necessarily millennials per se. So I think also having, I think for me would have some type of like consistency and like a solid foundation. So we have a foundation in terms of like the site and what to do and what processes they go through, but to have a better understanding of, or I guess not a understanding, but like a feeling of like, okay, this is kind of like almost automated in a certain sense, right? To where it's like, okay, we know that they're coming in. After they're coming in, we know the quiz. We know that they're then getting sent to a coach, and the coach is doing what they need to do. If we're going to still, with a coach, and we're going to proceed with coaching, and then that the coach is doing what they need to do. And then after that, have a plan to follow up. I think maybe a follow up after the coaching was an opportunity that we could have done a little bit more with too. Because I know the managers did, there was some in the notes that were like, oh, okay, yeah, they said to follow up in like 3 months. Did they actually follow up? I don't know that was the case, right?
Right.
So I think having some type of, I guess, predictability almost to it. I feel like we still don't, it's still kind of up in the air. I feel like we still don't necessarily know how well it's going to do or how.
Yeah. No, this is good. This is a good starting point. Amy, the question specifically for Get Beyond Money, we're having this conversation a year from now. It's November of 2021. What has to happen between now until then for you to feel good about the progress of Get Beyond Money, of rolling it up into the corporate brand, of really baking the whole employee experience around this, and just taking this to the next level? What does success look like looking backwards, starting with the end in mind?
Well,
Getting
for
really
one
clear.
thing, that when they, every time they answer the phone with, how can we help you get beyond money today? And once they interact with people at the branch asking the same question, I will feel comfortable that they get it and that it's part of our brand and not just something that we just did for a little while. For right now, it's not even close to that yet. And the second part of it, that we will be able to show true growth, either in products and or membership, tied to the educational part of the platform in terms of educate first, sell second. That our employees, from the frontline teller all the way to an operational person, understands that what our mission is to help people get beyond the stress of money, to get back to what is important to them, and using that principle in how they discuss, coach, and recommend different products and services, all with the end in mind of helping this person get to whatever the goal they want in a non-judgmental, helpful type of way. But if we don't see dollars attached to this, true dollars in terms of revenue the credit union is generating and or new members, then it is going to be just looked at that just like Young and Free. It's that thing we did for a little while that was a promotional campaign, whatever you want to call it, that we got a lot of press out of, but it was just something we did that's one and done.
What's going to stand in the way of that? Because I think what you just articulated is clear, but what's going to stand in the way of that becoming a reality? Because to me, hearing you talk through this, it's more than just the tactical pieces of what the focus of Get Beyond Money has been up to this point, which has really been an external focus. What's going to prevent that from happening? What are the roadblocks that we need to be aware of right now?
Senior leadership is a big one, because if they continue to look at this like it's a campaign, it's not going to trickle down.
It will be a campaign.
It will be a campaign. When Rich has his Friday calls, he's got to use the language. I mean, I try to use Get Beyond Money when I'm discussing anything about the credit union, either with a member, a fellow employee, or peers. I try to weave that in. And when I do that, like to an all staff email, I always will inevitably get one or two people back like, ha, 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 like how you worked in Get Beyond Money. Like it's some sort of that I'm trying to do it sneaky or something, and it just pisses me off. But that is a huge roadblock, is the idea of this, that people don't like change. They've been hit with a tremendous amount of change, and getting them to accept this as part of who we are, as a habit, as something that they do every single day without thinking about it, is going to be hard, because they are used to doing things their own way. In one sense, we have an opportunity, because there is no set way of doing things now. So to focus on, just like coaching and integrity coaching and member advantage, those things we thought were going to be difficult to instill as part of our culture. But because everybody embraced it as something that procedurally everybody had to do, it was easier to put into place and make it a part of the culture. It's harder when it's just a willy-nilly, off the hand, you say it, you don't, but there's no consequences if you don't, and there's no, who really cares at the end of the day? If the attitude is that, then it will fail. But if we can get it to be a point where it's ingrained into everything we do, and starting with the leadership on down, then it will be an easier road to hoe.
This sparked an idea.
Go.
All right. So I definitely think if it's like everything starts with our employees, right? We need our employees to buy into it. I actually think that one way that we can start to have the employees make them feel like they're getting something out of Get Beyond Money, or that it's for them, and to garner engagement at the same time, ask them what their Get Beyond Money stories are. How has Tropical helped them? We can write the blog, we can have them actually write the blog articles. So tell me about your story. I can start posting those for Get Beyond Money. They can start sharing them on Facebook and LinkedIn. It's a little bit of traction there. That's maybe something that we can start doing and testing to see, will that spark interest? Will that be something that they enjoy? Is that something that will resonate with them? That way they become advocates for it.
That's a huge word you just hit on, advocacy.
I'm gonna pop
Absolutely
in.
right.
Go ahead, Marilyn.
I'm gonna pop in and just, I'm gonna be a little bit of a Debbie Downer because I've worked in the branch environment, okay? We need to find a way to show, what Kara said, to show them the value, but in terms of what they need to do on a day-to-day basis to meet their goals. Because if I'm a branch person and my goals are to do 5 auto loans and I'm doing 5 auto loans without the help of Get Beyond Money, why do I need to incorporate Get Beyond Money into my life? I'm getting what I need to get done efficiently. I'm meeting my goals. I'm doing a great job without having to do all this other fluff. So we need to figure that out so that they can buy into it, not because senior management says so or because we make them say a line when they answer the phone, but because they see that it's going to help them meet their goals. So maybe their goals need to be raised. Maybe their goals need to be different so that they need Get Beyond Money in order to get, through their day-to-day, in order to make their day-to-day successful.
I agree with you.
And I'm trying to think as a branch person. If I'm a teller and I'm just trying to make a deposit and I'm being measured on my efficiency and how many people are standing in the line and how long it took per transaction, why am I going to stop and have a conversation with someone to talk to them about what their goals are? I'm not going to do that. So we just need to think like a frontline person, because otherwise we sound like, I don't know, like dreamers.
Yeah. And this is where hearing you guys talk through this, you've identified the goal, you're starting to identify some really key roadblocks. If you're 2 years into this initiative, if we don't get this culturally ingrained, and that's been my thinking the whole time, it will die. Like 2021 will be the very last year for this, and such something so beautiful. So in my opinion, 2021, when it comes to Get Beyond Money, yes, you can keep the external side going, kind of chugging along as is. I want to say the major push is going to be, Marilyn, what we started this whole conversation with you this morning. It's going to be the member voice of, not member, the voice of the employee. It's going to be the employee experience to this idea here. And it's going to be constant communication to where it becomes the vernacular. Like this is the unifying principle that can be had internally, but that has to literally be pushed from the top down. And you have to change behavior. And when you look at changing behavior, it's micro behaviors. To where you can even incentivize around answering the freaking phone. How can we help you get beyond money? Like, it's that fucking simple. Because when you hear it over and over and over and over again, thoughts become words, words become actions, actions become the predictable future. So it literally, everything revolves around these 3 words. And we don't need to make it very complex, but we have to keep coming back to the internal employees. So for example, Kara, how has Tropical helped you get beyond money as a team member? Now you have team member stories on those monthly meetings. Rich shares an employee get beyond money story. Here are our top 5 wins of how we've helped our members get beyond money. And so that's coming from the executive level. And you're not talking about, well, this is how many auto loans we did. This is how many checking accounts that we got. This is how many mortgages we did. No, here are the 5 top ways that we help people get beyond money this past month or this past quarter. Like being very intentional with these 3 words will create these micro behavior modifications. And then Marilyn, I'm agreeing with you 100%. The incentivification to this. Well, why do I need to change? Because a person's desire to transform. And I think that's the other thing too, is when you're talking about this internally, don't talk about change, talk about transformation. Because people, if you say, oh, well, we have to change the way that we talk and change the way that we communicate and change the way that we position ourselves and go to market from the employee experience, people are going to get really tight about that. No one likes change. We'd rather stay in the cave of complacency. The opportunity is, we see an opportunity living through 2020, going into 2021. as a culture, to transform our culture, because that's what this is. It's cultural transformation. What is cultural transformation? Transformation is growing from good to great. It's about being not better, because that says something's wrong. It's about being even better. And it's all of these small little, we think of their small words, but they have huge implications of how this is communicated internally. And so I'm going to come over here. Where's my...
And by the way, I didn't get to say this, but Kara, it's a really, really good idea. I'm not sure how many employees would be comfortable to share those stories. We might even ask if they want, they can be anonymous in terms of sharing of their stories. But I love the idea of folding their personal experiences in to share with the other employees. I think that's really, really good idea.
I think even your experience, because I mean, you sat with, you know, David and he had some tips and tricks and stuff like that was valuable. So I think not only getting their experiences, but tapping into some of the tips that they have to overcome will kind of help provide some traction too, because it's what people are, you know, are interested in terms of how to, probably especially now, in terms of how to get over, you know, debt.
Heck yeah.
I really feel like 2021 with this initiative, it's going to be way more inward facing than it is going to be externally facing from like a tactical implementation. Because so much time, effort, and energy, and marketing is going to have to drive this ship, marketing along with HR. Like that's your collaborator. Like if we're going to take this and go from, we're getting really clear on the goals, which you have, can you articulate those one more time, Audrey, for us? Sorry, I know you just took a drink.
No, you're good. You're good. No. We said that the internal organization will become advocates, showing true growth and true revenue and products or membership. And the community or your members understanding that Get Beyond Money is part of the brand, not just this one and done, let's forget about it campaign.
Yeah. This and so we've got clear on the goals. We identified the roadblocks as the lack of buy-in, the lack of awareness, the lack of clarity, and to Marilyn's point, what's in it for me? Why do I need to do this? This is a cultural exercise, and I can't help but think like with what SunTrust has done with the On Up movement, the case studies here, and even we have these strategic documents that I think it's important to communicate this internally, because at the executive level, if you don't buy into this, if you look at this as some like touchy feel good bullcrap, then that's what it is. It's just going to be some touchy feel good bullcrap. So I highly recommend, because this is what's driving their senior leadership team around this thinking. So I really think some research internally, I think some benchmarking internally would be a helpful experience to this. And I want to make this a reality. Go ahead.
When you say benchmarking internally, what exactly are we benchmarking?
Like go to all of your team members, and we can even help you on this. Go to all your team members and just simply ask, why should I open an account with Tropical Financial?
Gotcha.
And
I think when you
ahead.
said, James Robert, that HR should be our partner in this, if you scroll back up to the headline of the article that you're looking at, for us, I think right now, because we've already tried the touchy-feely part of this, we've already tried to explain to our employees why this benefits the member and how long-term it creates trust and builds relationships. We've already tried to tug at their heartstrings for it, right? And Amy brought up I think it was Amy who brought up a good point. When we implemented TMA, it stuck, it didn't go away. And that's because it's being measured. So I think we almost need to present, senior management's different. But when we're talking about the people that are going to actually deliver on this, it's not senior management, it's the frontline staff. And I think we almost have to position this right now as the purpose of your business and how it's measured, the purpose of our business and how it's measured. Because you know what TMA is measured in the fact that every month I am uploading a coaching document into Kara's record that shows that I did the coaching. See what I'm saying?
Yep.
And right now there's no measure for whether or not somebody's accepting and embracing Get Beyond Money. So how can we create a measure for that?
I love that, because if you can't measure it, it doesn't mean anything. So some thinking on this. Trying to get people and these frontline team members to embrace a culture of coaching out of the gate, well, you can already kind of refer back to what you're doing with TMA. You're building this culture of coaching from the internal. Now what we're wanting to do with Get Beyond Money is to take what we're doing with team members and also bring that to fruition with our members. But I think if you lead with that, it's just going to be met with extreme amounts of resistance, because if someone doesn't understand the purpose or why they're having to do it, it's not going to happen. So what's the micro wins? It's just the simple greeting someone when they come up to the teller station. Thank you so much for stopping by and visiting Tropical today. How can I help you get beyond money? Answering the phone. Like, I think that micro win is going to start really embedding and seeding this to become the next, because now it's like, okay, we measure that for a quarter, right? And it could be some accountability. You're listening in on phone calls, just the introduction of it. You're secret shopping the branch experience. Go ahead, Marilyn.
Sorry, I was telling my husband to close the windows.
Oh, I saw you shake your head like, no. So you're secret shopping these branches, the branch experience, and you're identifying, and you can begin to measure, are people really deploying this type of thinking in these, just the greetings. So that's a great measurement tool right there. But then what are the other ways that we could look at measuring this? Down the road, it'd be like, well, how many coaching sessions did we facilitate this month? As an individual. And it's not about going out of the gate and saying, you know what, we're going to set a goal for 5 or 10 coaching sessions. 1. Imagine if every single one of your team members was able to facilitate, a 15 to 20, 30-minute coaching session, whatever that might be. But I don't think we lead with that. We can't lead with that. That's the ultimate goal of where we're wanting to go. And we saw where we fell flat when we tried to bring that to fruition before. It was just because there was the lack of buy-in to this purpose to begin with in the first place. And all of this comes down to, I think, the individual's purpose. Helping to connect an internal team members, their personal why, with the larger organizational purpose. Their personal purpose, connecting the personal purpose with the organizational purpose of Get Beyond Money, that's going to have to be very critical. Because why do your team members do what they do? Why? And you're probably going to have some hard conversations about this.
Yeah, to get a paycheck.
That's just it. Not everybody has that purpose thinking in the position that are the
You're not going to like this. You're not going to like this. Get them off the bus.
Yeah, you know what's really interesting? One of the things the senior leadership team does is with new employees. Now, granted, sometimes they've been there for 6 months, but quarterly we meet with new employees and we do sort of a meet and greet one-on-one. We discuss things with them, and to a T, every single employee that has come from a bank has said that working for a credit union is so much better because of putting the customer first. They keep saying customer. So because in their previous jobs, when they worked for banks, they were so goal-oriented around pushing product to help the credit union's bottom line. It didn't matter whether or not it helped the person in front of them. So I've not heard anybody who's come to Tropical from a bank environment that hasn't brought that up as being such a positive for why they like working for Tropical. So maybe we can build on that.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to say, Amy. They're coming from a bank to a credit union, and they don't have that intense pressure that they have to sell 30 auto loans a day. Now they only have to sell 5 auto loans a day, right? But the measure is the same. There's no measure for what we're trying to do, for the feel-good part of it. And I'm just trying to think with you guys, like how do we measure that? How do we provide a measure that they have to attain that is going to show that even though they have to sell less auto loans, there's not as much pressure. That's not the only thing that they're doing. They're helping people get beyond money. How do we measure how well they're doing that? And I don't know, maybe it's adding a question to like our net promoter survey. We can ask members, do you feel Tropical is helping you get beyond money? And that becomes a measure separate from how many auto loans and how many checking accounts, that there's a number attached to that then they have to work towards, is what I'm trying to get at.
I kind of love that.
That's and you could even honestly make it even a much more easy, like measurable. That I don't think that's a range right there. I think that's a binary question. Do you feel Tropical Financial is helping you get beyond money? Yes or no? Do you feel your interaction today with someone at Tropical helped you get beyond money? It's like a yes or no.
Do you think though, I mean, in terms of phrasing it, if we're going to put this on Net Promoter, which is, there's just a set of questions that go out to these members, that's saying it like that, the get beyond money, is that going to resonate with them? Or do you have to explain it in terms of get beyond the stress of money so you can focus on what's important to you? I mean, do you think that it has to be said all the way through to explain it to the person?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can see them help get beyond money. What does that mean? No, I don't want to get beyond money. I need my money. What do you mean get beyond money?
It's a great point.
That would be
Yeah.
I would think that with no employee prompts to let them know what that means, that they might not get it.
Absolutely. Because now what it is do you feel your experience today with Tropical Financial helps you get beyond your financial stress to get towards a bigger, better, brighter future, or however you want to phrase that? I do think you need to define what that is a little bit further. But I'm pulling this up right here because, this is really, and we can follow up and we can have some more conversations around this, but bricklayer. The first bricklayer said, I'm laying a brick. I'm here for the paycheck. If you want to build a brand around purpose, you can't have just those that are in it for the paycheck.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying. You're probably going to have some hard conversations about getting the wrong people off the bus and getting the right people on the bus. And I think it's going to be very telling, like whenever, you do, and that's why I say you start with a benchmark. When I ask someone, why should I open an account with Tropical? Every single person should respond, with, and maybe that's another measurable. A year from now, whenever I ask someone to open an account with Tropical, or why should I become a member? Because we help you get beyond money. We help you get beyond the financial stress to get towards a bigger, better, brighter future. Like now you have a unified way to communicate. Because I'm telling you, if we were to do this assessment, we would have so many answers all over the board talking about, well, we have the best rates, we have the best service, blah, 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 blah. It's the same bullshit we see across every other financial brand we've ever worked with. But you guys have that unique perspective now. And I just think that's it's just a communication or a lack of awareness, because we want the people who are wanting to build the cathedrals and taking this even further, planning those times to celebrate the wins. That's why I think at the executive level, here are the top 5 ways we help people get beyond money. So these are getting really, really tactical. Even to your point, Kara, I love, and I have a list that I'll follow up with on ways to help bring this idea of get beyond money internally. I do want to come back over here. And this is where I think too, and this comes from the OnUp case study. It's something right here. And even at the CFO, we're a purpose-driven organization. All of this is believed internally and communicated internally, but the movement run insides out. And so what SunTrust did is they actually brought some of this financial coaching internally. And I think, Kara, you mentioned that you sat down with one of these coaches as well.
Yes.
But how many people are like not buying into this because they're like, I'm in a shitty situation myself. How can I even help someone get beyond money when I can't get beyond money myself? I got a lot of financial shame tied up into this. I'm helping people with money, but I can't get my finances in control. And that could be another disconnect right there. Because they're not in a psychologically secure place. And I think that's what this is all about. This is about the journey. This is about, we're not judging anyone for this. And so what SunTrust did is they brought this idea of financial wellness into their internal team members, and they help their team members feel safe and secure, and help educate, help empower them to move forward with On Up. And so this idea of financial wellness, and we have the article reference here, is they were bringing this internally because, once again, from a benchmark standpoint, how much is financial stress costing Tropical Financial? Because this is another quantifiable benchmark because of team members being stressed about their finances. So I think there's a lot of organizational transformational thinking that has to happen here. The goal is not to get into the specifics to make that a reality. The goal is to identify what are the goals, what are the roadblocks, and what are the opportunities. So we've identified the goals. I think and really the biggest opportunity is really around, we have to get beyond money internally. That's it. And what does that look like a year from now? It means whenever someone has an interaction, they by default say, how can I help you get beyond money today? Whenever they, your net promoter score, you tie that into it. Whenever someone is asked, why should I open up an account? It all comes back to, because we're on a mission to help people get beyond financial stress, get beyond money to get towards a bigger, better, brighter future. I think those are the key elements in measuring this type of progress here.
I think also trying to create, like, I think what would help would be like a toolkit almost, that we give access to everybody and put it like on our intranet or something. Mm-hmm. Because I see a lot of, like, so for example, we just got a PowerPoint presentation from our business people yesterday, and the footer that they used for the presentation is like the old motto, the right where you belong. So it's them not having access. Like if they had like this entire kind of like toolkit where they knew where to go and they could pull these different items, I think that kind of helps to make it a little bit easier on them too, because in theory, we're really not providing them. We're just telling them, hey, go to this landing page, or this is what you have to do, or this is what we have available. But we also, I feel like, haven't done a very good job of giving them the tools that they need to actually run with this as well. So
internal marketing.
Right. To be able to give them an actual link to the actual, the actual Get Beyond Money workbook, for example. So that would be an opportunity that somebody, say that it is a teller and somebody comes to them and they have some downtime. They say, hey, listen, I need advice. They can automatically be like, hey, listen, I have a really good resource for you. Here, let me send this over to you, or have it incorporated inside the logo, the logo of, the stuff that we use for branding. Our branding guide, essentially, should also incorporate like a toolkit for Get Beyond Money, and somehow integrate that with all of the internal documentations that we have.
The other thing I love what you're saying, because even if there's this has to be front and center for everyone, in their face, repeated time and time and time again until it becomes that person's new reality. Identifying what I would call 10 Get Beyond Money advocates, 10 Get Beyond Money brand ambassadors. Maybe each branch has one who goes through really intense Get Beyond Money training. Because this can't just be on the marketing team. It's going to kill you guys if it's just on y'all. You have to, and if you look at any type of transformational, cultural, transformational type of activity, you have three key players. You have your change agents, those who really believe in where you're going with this. You have your detractors who are grumbling and griping and stuck in the gap, meaning they gripe about problems. And then you have your neutrals who are really indifferent. But where the battle for this is won and lost isn't on your change agents or your detractors. There's so much polarization. The goal is to get rid of the detractors ultimately. But the battle is going to be won and lost with the neutrals. And the neutrals can be swayed one way or another if they get in and buy into the purpose of what you're looking to create and the value creation. But that's why, once again, it comes back to trying to identify what their purpose is and maybe going through some purpose, cultural activities with this. I think, but the brand ambassador is going to be the one who have to make this a reality and hold people accountable. And that could be at the branch level, that could be in a department, that could be in business development. Like, so one person who's really, and they would have like a monthly Get Beyond Money meeting with marketing, or a monthly Get Beyond Money meeting with the senior leadership team of here are the 5-10 ways that we've helped our members get beyond money, because now it becomes a reality. And to your point, Kara, and this is something that I'll follow up like with some specific tactics framed around this. Giving people the ability to share how they helped someone else get beyond money. And that becomes something that is celebrated. You have to celebrate this stuff. And to your point, Marilyn, so what's a measurable benchmark? Well, I complete this internal intranet survey of sharing how I help someone get beyond money today. Or so there's the frontward facing perspective of the individual, but I think more powerful than that, it's the accountability. I'm submitting a form now, and this is how I saw Kara help someone get beyond money. I overheard Kara sit down. She took the time to listen to someone's problems and blah, blah, blah. But now we're keeping each other accountable and we're reinforcing that. We've got a couple other financial brands that have done this culturally, because once again, at the end of the year, what do they do with all of these stories? They literally bind them up, because it's all documented. They literally bind them up in the raw, and that becomes an annual Get Beyond Money culture book. This idea has been really founded and seeded by what Zappos did. Zappos has a Zappos culture book, and it's just something that reinforces the Get Beyond Money perspective through these stories and narratives that are told from the perspective of those who are the ones who have to live this brand day in and day out.
Like that.
Audrey, you're documenting all this, yes? Okay, thanks, because I'm not going to
God, I hope
second.
so.
If not,
really
we have
trying to keep up.
Yeah. If not, we have
Audrey, thank you in
have,
advance.
Yeah, really.
yeah, we do have the video as well, which we are recording, so you can pull the transcript for this too. So we've talked goals, we've talked roadblocks, we've talked opportunities, and that's where this idea of the internal stories from a content perspective. I think content, identifying those positive stories internally, and then doing, a quick internal podcast. Because if people are submitting Get Beyond Monies internally, because how many team members do you have across the organization?
About 180.
I was going to say 150, 180. Yeah, I mean, each person submits one story a month for someone else, and we can talk about and show some of the tactical implementation of this. But that's how you start to get some of the stuff to stick. They become a character in the narrative. They become part of the story. One last point I'd like to make on this. For internal benchmarking, to get into where are your team members financially? And it's not about like what's in their bank account. That's the wrong way to look at this. It's what is their financial mind state? And so this is another way we could look at some internal objective benchmarking and research. And you could also apply this thinking externally as well with members, but I think you start with this internally. It's looking at what CFPB has put together, and they have a scale that provides some clarity around, and they have a set of questions And this is something that can be built in Typeform or whatever platform to acquire this. So they have, this is how you measure this right here. It's right here. So they have some questions that are asked, and you get a score against this. And I think this would be a really good way to benchmark your current employee team member situation of what's going on in their mind. And this is all anonymous data. But at least it gives you the aggregate of, because if I was to frame this up, I would frame this up. Why should I open an account at Tropical Financial? So you set that. That's a qualitative benchmark. And what you do is then you run that through a word cloud to see how are people thinking about and communicating about Tropical Financial internally, number one. And then number two, you follow that up with the quantitative of, well, let us know, because what the goal of this, the objective of this is just to get a better understanding of, we understand we've been through a lot of changes with COVID, and there's a lot of stress. We also want to get some, Marilyn, to your point, to start this whole conversation, it's about the voice of the employee. I think that's the next big level of marketing that I'm seeing, digitally speaking, is the employee advocate and getting everyone on board behind that. And if you look at who are some of the best brands that are doing it, they are typically digital brands because they're communicating that employee experience through the digital channels. What are the thoughts? How do you guys feel about this conversation so far? Because this is very different than what we've talked about in the past with Get Beyond Money. Get Beyond Money for the past 2 years has been more of an external facing exercise.
I think it's really good. I think it's just hard to understand the fact that like how to get people to, I guess in theory it makes sense. It's just a matter of how people actually do react to wanting to, accept the.
Let me.
This is like somebody's child. Like the parent thinks that the kid is so cute, and they walk around with all the cute outfits on the kid, and it's all about their kid. And other people are like, oh my God, yeah, your kid's so cute, but they really don't care. They really don't care about your kid. They're just saying that to be nice to you, and then they go about their day and they don't even think about your kid again, And that's what we're trying to do, Tab, is to make them like really love our kid. And it's not just our kid; it's all of our kid.
I think it's the organizational's child.
Yeah.
And really the organization's future. And that's why I'm going to be bold and predict this. There probably are some people who are not a good fit, culturally speaking. And no one wants to hear that.
And you know what, James Robert?
Any organization, no? I mean,
culturally not a fit, but they're accomplishing the goals that are set before them. So it's not their fault.
It's not their fault. No, it's not their fault. But
so the first ones that have to adopt this child are the senior management team. So that people like, for example, Brian, when he has his monthly meetings or his weekly meetings, and he's asking all the questions about how things are going, he's asking the question, how did it go this week with Get Beyond Money? How many people did we help? Does anybody have a success story? Or Amy, do you remember what David used to do? He used to go branch by branch. Pembroke Pines, you speak. Miramar, you speak. Miami, you speak. You know what I'm saying? And to just drive it home that this is our child, and we need to talk about our child,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that because not everyone's going to, I would say this is our future. This is what this is creating the future for Tropical Financial, which is going to create the future for your members. I'm going to come back. I keep coming back to Truist, SunTrust, and BB. And this is the reason why I use them as such a prime example. This will become I think the third or fifth largest financial brand in the entire country because they're merging BB&T and SunTrust together. And if they're able to do this at that scale, then we can do this at Tropical. And so right here, shared purpose to inspire and build communities, to build better lives in communities. And all of this is really documented in what we have going on with some of these resources, but this is just another area right here. So this idea, if you can apply this thinking and really, because this is cultural transformation, make this cultural transformation a reality, then it's much easier to take this thinking into your segs and your business development. And I know they're already doing this, but it's codifying it. It's operationalizing it. And that's what the experience is. And so maybe it's also offering some personal financial coaching for your team members. So I think we're coming back on this full circle. I've got a lot of ideas that I've thought about ahead of time, but I don't like to share those ideas immediately out of the gate, because it's, where are you at now? Where do you want to go? What's the roadblocks that's going to stand in the way? And then we've also identified some opportunities there. Final thoughts before we break for lunch, because this, to me, this is so critical, but it's senior leadership. It's that buy-in. It's cultural change and transformation. When we go to lunch, I'm going to pull up a model that I think of what's going to have to happen, or what you're going to see happen. And it's the predictable future. You've seen it. You've lived it. You keep bumping up against the same thing over and over again. We've identified it. It is employee experience. It's employee adoption. It's employee advocacy. But it all starts into getting into their heads a little bit. Why do they do what they do? If I were to distill this down, 3 things. Why do they do what they do? And quantifying that, benchmarking. Because like anything, you have to start with a benchmark. Why do they do what they do? Why do they believe someone should open an account at Tropical Financial? And where are they right now in their own financial mindset, their own financial mind state? Start with those 3 things. And that's maybe the first 90 days right there. And then you can use that to help inform the next steps. So it's almost like an internal research project. And then the senior leadership team can take that data and use that data to help communicate, saying, hey, we feel where you're at. We understand where you're at. Not only are we dedicated to helping our members get beyond money, we're just as dedicated, if not more dedicated, to helping our team members get beyond money. Because if you're struggling internally, then that's going to be amplified externally.
Amy, here's another one. Have Elizabeth add to the employee survey. Do you have the tools you need to help members get beyond money?
Good idea.
No.
Actually, that entire survey, we can look at the way this, especially the frontline part of that survey. We can take a look at the way they're worded and see where is it that they're asking the question.
Uh-oh, she froze.
Great screenshot.
They're always so good, right?
They are.
Uh-oh.
I'm gonna see if I can pause her video real fast.
Okay.
No, she's completely locked
Yeah,
at this
she's
point.
gone.
Yeah.
This was a great conversation. I think you can feel how strongly we feel about it and how frustrated it is, because it's almost like it stops here. And how do we force people to love us?
You can't. You can't. You can't. All you can do is to show them the way, and you show them the way by communicating the why. But you have to connect the corporate why with the personal why. And if that doesn't happen, then either A, you will never transcend to become a purpose-driven financial brand, or B, you're going to have to get the wrong people off the bus to get the right people on the bus.
I'm back.
Hi.
There you are.
Sorry, it does it almost every time after I've been on a video call for too long. It reboots. I don't know why. I'm not losing internet. I'm not losing. It just reboots every couple hours or every hour.
No, you're good. So, Marilyn, you had shared a comment. I think we're right here. This has been a really good discussion. around goals, roadblocks, opportunities. Once again, the next step within every single one of these is to take the thinking and deploy it around the other three key areas of growth. Who before how? Who do we need to align ourselves with to make this a reality? And for example, we've mentioned HR, you mentioned Elizabeth. So you're already starting to identify the who's. Number two, what are the tools and the technologies that are needed to make this a reality? And so in this, I'm already seeing some surveying internally to make this a reality. I also think utilizing some just get beyond. Give me 1 second. I'm actually going to go get some things that I think might be a helpful tool, because I think when we think about tools, we naturally think about technologies, but how do we make the intangible tangible? 1 second.
We literally sent him off running. Whose doggy is upset?
I heard you guys talking still, and you guys, oh, look, she froze. Oh, look at that face. What the hell kind of face was I making? I
pretty
heard
one.
that before it dumped.
So I have 4 Post-it notes here. These Post-it notes, growth is measured by progress, not perfection. How are you progressing? Growth is a journey from good to great. What's next on your journey? Growth is a journey that begins in the mind. What's on your mind today? Growth requires focus. What do you need to stick to today? Pun intended. Sticky note. But I even think, like, once again, looking at the communication methodologies internally for Get Beyond Money and tying this back, like literally Tropical Financial is on a mission to help people get beyond financial stress to get towards a bigger, better, brighter future. Like that becomes the unifying perspective. That's the thesis, which is simplified to those 3 words. But yeah. Any final thoughts before we go to lunch today from Tabitha, Kara, Amy, Marilyn on Get Beyond Money? How do you feel? Because this is a really, like I said, big departure.
Better. Sorry.
How do I feel? I feel fine. I mean, in terms of what we spoke, I mean, it makes sense. But again, I think we can do as much as we want in terms of trying to do it, but if we don't get that, that buy-in, then it's back to square one.
Yeah.
I think we understand the benefit of it, and how we would want to make it go further, but it's hard to get 180 people behind it.
Starts with the purpose, which you've identified. That's great. Then in the next it's senior leadership buying into that culturally. Because I've got some thoughts on that idea of culture. Audrey, and I'm gonna write this down. It's once again, I like to define things, because I think if we don't define stuff, then everyone defines it from their own worldview. I have a formal definition around culture that I'm going to come back once we come back from the break, from lunch. I'm going to share that, and then I'm also going to share my change management model, because this is going to be, that is what it is. Get Beyond Money is the ultimate exercise in change management and transformation. That has to start internally. We've tried to do it externally, and we've had moderate success. We see that the message resonates, but it falls apart because of the internal experience. So
I also think, quite honestly, the idea of adding this to Net Promoter, because every employee who knows that they are named in these Net Promoter surveys, we know what employee the member had an engagement with that caused the member to either compliment or complain. and answer questions in a certain way. And they're measured. They are coached based on those surveys. So one of the previous problems was there was a question that said that I knew, or the employee discussed different offerings or different product services for Tropical, and that was always super low. That was always like a 1 or a 2 rather than a 10. We actually ended up removing that question because it wasn't fair to the tellers necessarily. It usually was the tellers that would bring that score down because that's not their job to discuss that. Right. But if the question is that I felt respected and I was greeted in a kind and courteous manner, if that score is low, they get a talk. That's part of their coaching. That is a big no-no. That's not allowed in Brian's world. And if we create that, this as being as important, if not more so than that, because it all ties in, then that's, I think we'll see some change happening if they're being measured on it specifically through these Net Promoter surveys. If those are being scored low, that the person didn't feel like they were being coached on how to get beyond money, or what that means, yes or no, and they say no, that's going to be a starting point to get them to think. Because if it starts showing up on their coaching forms that they have every month, then that I think that will help drive change as well.
Another idea coming out of this, and it's a little bit tactical, but I think a lot of the tacticality comes from just having the strategic conversation. And what I mean by that is you start every engagement with, hey, how can I help you get beyond money today? And as you wrap up that conversation, oh, by the way, we have one Get Beyond Money tip to send you off with. And it's something so practical. It's just something so that someone can apply. And it's not the frontline teller's responsibility on whether or not they're applying that, but it's applying that thinking of helping first, selling second. And maybe you have like your monthly Get Beyond Money recommendation that someone could send off. And it's an extra 10 to 15 seconds to end whatever conversation that is. So it's just a way like, well, wow, I never thought I would get that experience when talking with someone about, the transaction. And I think that's key right here. At the front line, at the teller level, it's about putting the transformation of people, of members, over the commoditized transaction, because they can go transact anywhere. So I think that's one. And then 2, coming back to this idea of transformation, there's 4 transformations that have to happen to make this idea Get Beyond Money reality. You have to transform the individual. Then you're going to have to transform the teams, because teams are made up of individuals. Then and only then do you transform the culture, to transform the organization. Because the organization is made up of teams. Teams are made up of individuals. And whenever you get that Get Beyond Money buy-in at the cultural level, at the organizational level, that's where the community transformation happens. It's almost like we've been solving the problem backwards. We've started with community transformation, but it's fallen apart at the organizational level, which is falling apart at the team level, which is falling apart at the individual level. So 4 transformations: self, team, organization, community. But we've started with community. We've been focused on community because we think marketing, it's a community initiative. We're external facing. But the more that I'm seeing really coming out of COVID over the last 8-9 months, it's the employee as well. So it's a double-sided prong. Does that help visualize that a little bit?
That helps.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Man, 3 hours has flown by. I got it early. I don't normally get started till about 10 o'clock here. So I work late. I work odd hours. My brain doesn't turn on until 10 o'clock at night anyway. And then I'll typically go to like 2. Going forward, we got lunch, and let me swing over here and look at the agenda. Where's the agenda? Pull this up here. So we're going to go to lunch. This is really actually good, because now we're going to come back to member survey. We're going to come back to getting more reviews, referrals, and then we're going to come back to Faraday, which we've already talked about a little bit. And then I think we'll be in a really good place. Before we break, we've covered a lot of ground in 3 hours. Looking back over the last 3 hours, what has been one perspective, idea, insight? And that's why we're documenting this as well with video, as well as Audrey taking notes. So I'm grateful for that, Audrey. Thank you so much. What has been one idea, perspective, insight for each of you before we break? Because I think if we can just capture that, we're in a really good place before we go to lunch.
For me, it was sort of understanding and hearing, like, for the first time, the vision that we have for onboarding.
Excellent.
I think the word transform, that one, I was like, oh, that's a good one.
In what way?
Just everything around it. You said we're not changing, we're transforming. And I agree with that. I think transforming is a much more inviting word. And I think if you lead with that word, instead of we're changing the process, we're transforming the process, people will be more receptive to that.
That's a big thesis for my next book that I'm framing. It is called Banking on Change. And the subtitle is How to Lead People in the Age of AI. The reason for that being is exactly the conversation that we're having here. This is something I'm seeing across multiple institutions. The big term right now has been, and for the last few years, and I'm getting sick and tired of it, it's digital transformation. And all of that conversation has been around technology and the human, the employee, and particularly, because I think that's the most important takeaway of all of this, hearing you verbalize that, Kara. When we talk about transformation, we have to keep in mind and remember the people who are deploying and applying these changes to make that new reality, to create that new future. And if we forget that, it'll all fall apart. So that's great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you, Kara. Tabitha, Amy.
I think the conversation has sparked a lot of good ideas in terms of how to reorganize and get individuals to kind of adapt to get beyond money. I also was just thinking, I had just sent an email over to Kara too. One of the ideas was to kind of play off of your idea of creating groups on Facebook and stuff like that, but also targeting groups on Facebook that are like budget, like financial and budget. I'm part of a group on Facebook that is, I forget what it's called now, but it's like, it's essentially ideas of like all these like side jobs and stuff like that you can do. So a lot of the questions that you get on there is, how do I have $50,000 in student loan debt, how do I get rid of that to apply for a mortgage or something like that? So then that sparks ideas of how to like do different side jobs to kind of build down that debt, right? So I think that that's a good opportunity to kind of sort of join these different type of groups as more of like a grassroots type of strategy rather.
Yeah.
And then kind of sort of join these different groups, then join these different conversations and provide these different type of tips and articles and stuff like that to start building on these, blogs and workbooks and all this stuff. Like we have just all this content. We have a lot of content that we can get out. So especially if it's a local group, like if we can find finance budgeting in Miami or whatever, at least we know that they're, one, interested in these particular topics. Two, it's our target market in terms of it being in Miami. So that's what I took from it.
No, and I'm so glad that you brought that up, because this whole conversation that we've had over this past hour really was focused around the internal efforts of Get Beyond Money, which that's about intentionality. But Tabitha, I'm in agreement. It's not that we stop the external efforts. It's just being 100% aware and intentional that without the internal buy-in and support, any external efforts made in 2021 will probably be the last ones to be had. So yeah, definitely keeping the external side of Get Beyond Money going, churning, working, running. But also knowing that we have to divide our time with Get Beyond Money for the internal perspective and the internal advocacy. Kara, I know some of the research that I've shared with you from like kind of those micro niche groups, micro niche audiences has been the mommy blogger, and identified some very specific areas within Miami, the Miami market, the South Florida market, of creating some of those we'll call them digital community collaborations, which actually I just recorded a podcast about this on Monday. It'll come out this next Monday, which is all around this idea of digital community, because community is not in the physical sense. It's trying to transcend that conversation into the digital world. So Tabitha, thank you so much for sharing that. Appreciate it.
And we kind of see that, and just to add on to that, we kind of see it today, especially with the sweepstakes that we do for the 85th, or the contest rather, is when there was one day that we drilled down into it and we saw that it was like a mommy group on Facebook that was all about like coupons and sweepstakes and contests and all that other stuff. So so we see it, it's just a matter of kind of capitalizing on it. And then by also doing that, we also kind of forego the internal feedback in terms of, well, you know, we don't even have that many leads anyways, or we're not seeing that many quizzes coming through anyways for it to be like something that we want to put focus on. If we can, you know, to your point, focus on not restructuring internally, but also bringing in the leads, then we kind of drift the past that, well, why is this important if we're not, you know, seeing traction with it?
You just said something and it connected a dot for me in my like neural networks. I know it sounds so nerdy. And this is something that connects with Marilyn. How do you measure against this? Each team member on the front line has the potential, and it takes the conversation back to what we were talking about with Pearls before. Each team member has their own Get Beyond Money landing page. They have a card. They give that person a card at the end of the transaction. You know, at Tropical Financial, we're on a mission to help people get beyond money, blah, blah, blah. Take 60 seconds and we can help identify ways to help you stop losing and start saving even more money. Visit this website right here, tropicalfc.org/A McGraw. Now I can see how many Get Beyond Money quizzes Amy is driving, because now you're connecting the physical world with the digital world. And there's a lot to work out to apply this thinking, but it's just another way to get the front line involved in this Get Beyond Money experience. They're now actively driving these quizzes, because we know the quiz conversions has been like the best asset. But if we have 180 other people or 150 other people, they are now becoming micro marketing channels to drive organically Get Beyond Money traffic by just communicating the value. It takes 60 seconds. We can help you identify ways to help you stop losing and stop saving even more money, and maybe even tie an incentive around it. And each month we do a drawing for, you know, $1,000 to help kickstart your own Get Beyond Money journey. That way you're putting a carrot in front of the behavior for the member and tying this back around, and then you incentivize the employee. Well, you know, if that person that we randomly draw, if they came from your landing page, well, then we're the one. You also get a, you know, $50 gift card or something along those lines. But it's just a thought that I had, Tabitha, coming from you dialoguing through that, of ways to connect the online and the offline experience, which that then creates its own list, because you got a lot of that list developed already, and the communication flows developed already. It's just, you know, adding more in the awareness stage, driving traffic into those pages. Thoughts?
Yeah, and it also gives a sense of them being part of the process.
Absolutely. Yes.
We could actually look at just the traffic to each individual page. It might not be necessarily the number of quizzes because that person can't necessarily force a person to take a quiz, but if they can get them to the page to at least start the conversation, we can certainly use that as a measurement tool as well.
And from an operational standpoint, it's just a matter of cloning pages, and you would have the same exact form that you have today. So it's not about complicating anything. It's just getting an exponential multiplying factor of assets and resources already available at your disposal. And getting, once again, it's about getting the front line, getting others involved in the narrative and letting them be a character in the Get Beyond Money story. Thank you, Tabitha. Amy, we'll wrap up.
I'm going to go fast because it's already been, it's already 18 after. I think that the thing that, and this ties right into what you just said, is just finding those brand ambassadors for each branch and each department. And rather than trying to train everybody and make sure everybody's got the information, I mean, yes, training everybody, but making sure that at least one person from every department is an advocate, is an ambassador, and can help their own department grow as well with the Get Beyond Money.
Yeah. And it's about keeping that constant communication with them, either on a weekly, bi-weekly, or at a minimum of a monthly basis.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Guys, thank you so much. Excellent job to start the day. We went a little bit long. We had a little bit of delays in between, but we got 41 minutes for lunch. Go grab a bite. And then I'll see you back at 1 o'clock Central, 2 o'clock. Did I do that right? Yes, it's 12:19. 1 o'clock your time, 12 o'clock Central here.
Sounds
Do you
good.
want us to shut this down? I'm going to shut it down and then re-log in because otherwise it won't stay open that long.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's go ahead and shut this down, and then we'll log back on, same link at 1 o'clock to
Thank you. See you in an
1
hour,
o'clock noon.
45
Yep.
minutes.
Thanks.
Bye.
Cheers. Later. Bye.